Yo, that's right. It's Divinesense boxing in the building. And we have a very serious topic to talk about tonight for me and today for you. I feel like this is a topic that must be spoken about. If you consider yourself a true boxing fan and it's a sport that you love, I think it's very important that we recognize the fighters who step through those ropes and sacrifice their time, their bodies, their lives. And we have to come together as one united voice and let people know that this will not be tolerated and something needs to be done. Now, as we go along here, it's very important if you can see me okay and hear me okay, send me a thumbs up in the chat. If there are some issues, we can simply take off the video, just go straight to audio. But nonetheless, the show must go on. And with that being said, we got a special guest today. We've got the sensei on board. Him and I have been talking backstage here for the past couple minutes. That's why it was a little bit of a lag on our end because we were chopping it up behind the scenes, just getting ready to deliver a good message for you guys today. But what I'm going to go ahead and do is bring in the sensei himself, and that is StormyB Man Boxing. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man? Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me to your platform, and salute to the chat. What's going on?
Yeah, so first, before we get into the topic of today, you told me about a certain segment that you have called The Eye of the Storm.
Yeah.
And I kind of briefly went over it when you told me, and I saw that you interviewed some channels that I recognize, like 78 and D-Style Boxing and Blue Blood. And I just want to tell you that I think that's a brilliant idea that you have. It gives the opportunity to hear backstories of channels that most of the subscribers probably wouldn't know about. So I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate what you're doing, and I can't wait to be featured in the Eye of the Storm as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, man. And it was something that was brainstormed out of, no pun intended, out of somewhat of, I'm constantly creating content where I try to break new frontiers. I don't try to copy anything else anyone does. I have enough of my own ideas. Believe me, I'll probably leave this world with thousands of ideas that haven't got finished yet. That's just how I am. My mind really works that way. But when I came up with this particular concept, it was actually initiated upon after someone was trying to, for lack of a better term, steal my content. And so rather than to go to war and battle about, oh, you're just biting my material, I didn't want to do all of that. I said I was going to come up with something else. So In the Eye of the Storm was birthed out of that. And what I realized was this. You know how you talk about ego with people? I do what I do without ego. So I said, what if I just came up with this concept and decide to invite people on my platform to talk about themselves, talk about why they do what they do, why they decided to become a channel operator and a content creator.
Right.
And since the basis of it is boxing with me, and for some of them who do boxing as well, that's a great way to connect and have a conversation about it. So In the Eye of the Storm was birthed out of that. And it's a show where it's broken up into 4 quarters. a 1 hour show broken up into 4 quarters. We spend the first quarter of the show introducing the guest, talking about them, their history, why they do what they do, and what their position is on their platform. The second quarter of the show, we begin to talk about current affairs and things of that nature and their thoughts and feelings about what we're seeing or witnessing. The third quarter of the show, we talk about or revisit if there was a big fight on the horizon that just happened or one that may be on the horizon that's happening soon. We give our take on it, our picks and pans, thoughts about, what might happen, how we might break it down between the two of us. And then that last quarter of the hour, we just spend reflecting on what we just went through, what's on the horizon for us both, and where we would like to see things heading in the future and whatnot. So that's it. It's basically like a pardon the interruption with us talking our platforms and the sport of boxing at the base of it.
Right. I think it's brilliant because, like I said, most subscribers, and before I even got on YouTube, which was many moons ago, but when I first got on YouTube, I had a few channels that I listened to, and you listen for the content, you listen for the delivery, you listen for the energy or the personality, just like watching Undisputed or another channel or Pardon the Interruption, like what you mentioned. We watch these type of shows because, it's part of our day and we like the particular characters that are in there. But when you do the behind the scenes kind of scenario, that's very intriguing. And like The Last Dance that Michael Jordan did, I mean, that was amazing to see the backstory of Michael Jordan and the stuff that he went through that during the time we had no idea about. Most of us didn't. And I think it's a brilliant idea. I really do, because the main thing is boxing is a very niche sport, right? It's not the most popular sport, and it's a very, I guess, small market sport. So it unites us, and everybody is connected within the sport of boxing differently. Some people actually fought in the ring. Some people just became a fan of the sport because maybe their parents, their uncles, their mom, whoever was a big boxing fan. So you just kind of grew up with it. And everybody has their own kind of entrance, I guess you can say, into the sport of boxing. And I think that's always interesting. I love hearing from people, hey, how did you get into boxing? Or, oh, yeah, I boxed when I was in high school and I just always loved the sport. Or, oh, no, my dad boxed and I grew up around it, so I just always liked it. It's always interesting to me on how you get into a very beautiful but also violent sport. And sometimes people forget that, right? It's a very strange, dynamic oxymoron, right? A beautiful, violent sport. And as much as it is a sweet science, we have to remind ourselves that it is a very brutal and violent sport. And with saying that, that segues right into today's topic and why it's so important to me on why judges and referees need to do their job properly. And the corruption of the sport is actually detrimental to the fighters. They're already sacrificing so much working and training. And a lot of times fighters, what a lot of people don't know is fighters they're humans, just like you and I. They have wives and children and girlfriends that they have to deal with behind the scenes, like we all do. And some of them dedicate their lives to the sport so much to the point that they lose relationships. They lose out being with their children. This is how much fighters sacrifice. And I take an extreme offense when I see a decision that we saw recently with Mykal Fox. I briefly mentioned it in a video I just released very early this morning. If you guys haven't watched it, it's up on my channel. It's just a 5-minute video of my initial thoughts of the robbery that I witnessed. You know, Stormy, I watched the whole fight, right? And I was thinking to myself, this Mykal kid looks good, man. Like he's a very promising welterweight, and he kind of reminds me of a little miniature Paul Williams. He's tall, he's lanky, you know, he's got power, he's got pop, he's got hand speed. He's maybe not as powerful as Paul Williams yet, but he's got that awkward body that you just don't see in the welterweight division very often. He's like 6'3" or something like that. And that's very unique. So I'm watching the fight, and I'm thinking, I mean, I guess I can give Maestre a couple rounds. I mean, you know, he was trying to be aggressive. He was trying to get on the inside. You can tell that was his game plan. And so I'm like, you know, I can give him a couple rounds for attempted effective aggressiveness. But not at one point, Stormy, where I was like, oh shit, this might be close. Man, I was sitting back. I was already chatting to my boys and thinking about what I was going to talk about on YouTube. And then I heard a decision. I was just like, did I just hear that right? This can't be happening. And do you know what popped in my head right away, Stormy, was it reminded me of, speaking of Paul Williams, the Paul Williams Arislandi Lara fight. Do you remember that fight?
Yes.
And that was the first thing that popped into my head. And then, of course, immediately it was, you know, Mildred Taylor and Lennox Lewis and Vander Holyfield, their first fight. And it just took me back to those moments. But here's the thing. Those fights were somewhat more competitive. Like the Lara and Paul Williams fight was, you know, had competitive moments. But this is 10 rounds to 2. And the thing is, at maximum, I guess you can say. But there was a knockdown in the fight as well. So even if you give Maestre a couple rounds, the dude got knocked down. So I just want to go ahead and let you give your thoughts, because you mentioned something to me backstage that I didn't know about. And I guess the female judge that scored it 117 to 110, which is absolutely a travesty, has now basically been discovered on social media to be the wife of somebody in the WBA and is now being revealed as a racist. You might have a little bit more information, so I'll go ahead and let you jump in here.
Well, the information is still coming down the pipeline. Just like I said, over the past 48 hours, you know, after we spoke about the travesty of a decision that came out of that fight Saturday night, my post-fight show Saturday night, I spoke, you know, I didn't even speak of the day's events. I didn't speak of the fights from the DAZN card and the full Fox card, because I felt compelled to zero in on the travesty that was the decision behind the Fox and Maestre card. I couldn't get beyond that. And my partner and collaborator on that show that I do, the post-fight show, Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens, he agreed with me, which was very, you know, that was comforting, because for us to decide that we were going to spend that post-fight show talking about this situation because it was so fresh. And we said that we could revisit talking about the other fights of the day at another time, because that's how it was to speak about this situation. This was an event where there were fighters that the consensus is people don't even really know who these guys are. That's why you zero in, because it's happening on the larger scale all the time. Don't forget, we just had a few weeks ago the Jamel Charlo and Brian Castano fight and the decision that came out of that. We clearly could have had an undisputed champion out of that event, but due to just nefarious dealings with the judges, and Reggie and I talk about this often on our show, the Postfight show, because it comes down to these judges taking someone's livelihood and holding it in the balance with biased decisions and incompetence. So we felt, Saturday night to talk about it. And so from Saturday night, our show, we were suggesting that anybody who's out here as a content creator, doesn't matter what part of the community you are out here on YouTube, it means that stop the bickering, stop this, because someone has more subs than you or someone is a little more popular than you. Do your part in covering the sport properly and express your outrage over this. Turn the heat and pressure up finally with the power that you have, with your microphones that you have, and become one. As a finger can be broken, okay? But as a fist, you can strike a deadly blow. And this is the time to call for it being a fist. And we fight for the justice of these fighters out here. Do you realize that Mykal Fox, he was, like a last minute decision brought in for this fight? And that someone on the card earlier, the same card, was someone he lost to in his last fight, Santa Maria. He lost a fight to Santa Maria, and the irony is, in that fight, he was dropped in that fight, but otherwise boxed well, but Santa Maria got the decision over him. So here he is in this fight. He drops Mastery, clearly outboxes him for the majority of the fight. If you want to give Mastery 1 or 2 rounds, I can't argue. But did he win 5 or 6? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Plus, he was put on his can. And when Mykal got into a rhythm in the fight, he showed some things that you don't see from a 6'3" guy. We were talking behind the scenes about Paul Williams. Well, he was showing an elusiveness and ability to get under shots and everything at 6'3", fighting a smaller, shorter opponent, and outboxing him and keeping him at the end of his punches, catching him coming in, giving him great lateral movement, and listen, not tying the guy up. Some guys look to tie you up and stop your momentum and make you no, he boxed him. Ring generalship, effective aggression, and point scoring. All of that was not reflective in none of the 3 judges' scorecards. And so here it is coming out today, very early this morning. Shout out to Blue Blood Sports TV and some of the others who do the 24-hour, updates, because these guys seem to never sleep, right?
Yeah, for sure.
They're now saying that the female judge, who had the wide margin on the scorecards of, I think it was 117 to 110 or something like that, people had went to her social media page. I think it was either her Twitter or Instagram. I think it was Instagram. And they found several incidents of her showing extreme prejudice and bias, even using racial slurs to be directed at certain personalities. I'm talking about mainstream personalities. Former First Lady Michelle Obama, LeBron James. This woman is referring to these people as apes. Okay. And when someone wrote in her Twitter page that her scorecard was, questionable or whatever, she called them an ape and said, "You're out of here, ape," and blocked the person. So people were getting wind of this and started sharing the information. And she has now since taken it down. She's taken her page down. She's deleted the
Wow.
account or whatever. But you have to understand that this is someone who is also married to a WBA official. And she's been brought in as a judge over matches against people that she has bias toward. And I would really question how much about the sport of boxing does she know, because her scorecard is reflective
Right.
of
Right.
her
And that's
incompetence. So it's
and
like,
that's
this is not speaking biased against her. It's questioning her acumen, and it's
right.
questioning who put her in that seat, along with the other two who had the sensibility to make the scorecards closer, but they still had it in the wrong direction. You understand? So
Yeah.
that's still corrupt. You make it appear like that
Yep.
I had it close. The fight was not close. So
Yep.
therefore, your scorecards, even with your numbers being close, are reflective of your incompetence, because there's a difference between a fight that's being highly contested, like the Castano and Charlo fight. It was
Right.
highly contested. They both hurt
Yep.
one another. There was ebb and flow. It was back and forth. Hey, one guy should have won the fight. It didn't matter who. It matters that you come to a proper decision in a close
Right.
fight.
Right.
Now, in this instance, the fight was not even close, but it was a unanimous decision in the wrong way. This must stop. So when we're here to
by
talk
wide
about
margins.
these things, yes. So when we're here to talk about these things, we can do it with the Unbiased platform, because guess what? We take in information on these bouts week after week after week. We are back next week for more bouts. So we don't have that type of tie into the situation where you're trying to be favorable. We're trying to produce great content, and our eyes have to be open to everything that's going on. This is why I said, for some of us out here who create content, stop with the bickering and that thing that you do by trying to draw the ire of someone else, and start looking at that sport with the proper eye and be responsible and be accountable. Because once you start doing that, people have to take note and respect of what you're doing. They've already made this woman take her social media down. The next thing is to have her removed from boxing, period. She should never enter a fight venue again and be asked or signed to a match. I don't care if it's an amateur match between two guys that are starting out their amateur career in their first fight. She should never be allowed to judge a fight again, because she has shown that at her very core and essence, she's a biased person.
Yep, facts.
But that's what I had to say about that opening up.
And you just dropped the mic. I appreciate that. Let me go ahead and get into some of these chats. The chat's blowing up a little bit. First, I want to jump to Devontae Moss says, bro, Devon and Stormy, I just finished arguing with Passion Fury fans. I was telling nothing but the truth, and they attacked my personal life. Well, that's what happens when they don't have an argument. I've been in an argument in real life with a Fury fan before, and we were going back and forth, and he was losing the debate, and then he just said, well, you're just stupid. So, this is the type of people that we're dealing with. Antoine, good to see you, man. Thanks for the super chat. Much love and appreciation. I always tell you guys, every dollar is stretched out to the maximum to help propel us and motivate us to do content like Stormy and I are doing right now. Every super chat goes a long way, more than you know. Big Dog Willie, same. Appreciate the super chat. Boxing is the wild, wild west. No rules, no shame. Well, let me go back and read that comment. Sorry about that, Antoine. That judge's Twitter page was more than racist and foul. Yeah, just like Stormy pointed out, it's been taken down. And she could run, but she can't hide. She's already revealed herself. She already popped her head up. This shit holds up. This is Trick Boxing. Trick Boxing is a infamous and very appreciated subscriber of mine, Drew, and probably Stormy. If not, he will be soon. This shit holds up boxers' careers and some boxers' greatness. Charlo could have been the undisputed, one fight at undisputed and moved up. Now the guys below have their turn to shine. Facts. Want to give a special shout out to Nitty G. He's an official member of the channel. Always good to see you in the chat, Nitty. Winners train, losers complain. LDBC, Twitter, and she deleted the account. Yep. So catching up with the chat here. Powerful words from StormyB as always. You know, people conduct themselves, especially content creators. They conduct their channel the way they want to conduct it and whatnot. But for me, as I pointed out earlier, it's an issue of if you really claim to be a boxing fan, it doesn't matter how big your channel is. It doesn't matter if you have 100 subscribers or you have 100,000 subscribers. If you claim to be a real boxing fan, you love the sport, and you appreciate the work and dedication and the discipline that fighters put into the ring and to be a fighter, a full-time fighter, a professional, then this is something that all of the community right now should be talking about. As StormyB just mentioned now, you know, fingers can be broken, but we have to be one solid fist. And what I wanted to mention to StormyB, and I didn't mention it behind the stage because we're kind of rushing through to get the show going, is that what a lot of people don't realize, maybe they don't think about it, maybe they don't realize it, but I'm here to tell you, these channels like myself, StormyB, Drew Titan, 78 Sports, Blue Blood, all these Counterpunch Boxing, all these different channels, it filters through. And trust me, the fighters do hear. They may not sit down and watch hours and hours and hours of YouTube videos, but they hear what we're talking about out here. And the sport of boxing is not basketball. It's not football where you have 10,000 channels. This is a very collective and small community. You know, at one point in time when YouTube was first created, back in the OD days, there was only like maybe 12 YouTube channels talking about boxing. It has grown. I'm learning that now that I've made my comeback and I'm starting to, people keep, oh, you got to go check out this channel, check out that channel, check out this channel. There's more, but in comparison to other sports, there's only so many channels out here. So what we talk about goes a long way, and fighters do hear about it. And it may not be the fighter himself or herself, but people within their camp that says, hey, champ, check this out. Look what I found. Antoine, once again, with another super chat, man. I appreciate you. Respect, gentlemen. Keep it up 100. Thank you, man. Thanks for dropping by, guys, and thanks for being a part of the conversation. Freddie Ruger, always good to see you, bro. You got to train your fighters to KO MOFs. You can't depend on just the sweet science. You got to kill people in there. Well, like I mentioned earlier, as sweet as the science is and how beautiful the sport can be, it is a very violent and brutal sport. And that within itself is why we have to be a voice and protect these fighters. And like StormyB said,
can I say ahead. Something about
yeah, go ahead.
Freddie's remark there? Freddie, one of the things that have always separated the sport of boxing from any other type of martial art competition, or even now what you have in MMA and UFC, is that boxing was adopted with the description of the sweet science. Every man born of his mom and dad is not able to just anesthetize the other guy and take him out and obliterate him physically. But one of the divine aspects of the sport of boxing is when men learn how to use their body and use the assets that they may have physically as gifts. And that might be someone who has either slow twitch muscles, fast twitch muscles, agility, cumbersome movement, or sluggish movement. And when a trainer can take that particular individual and show them how to accentuate their strengths in a competitive match against another person, even if that person doesn't have the same type of talent, what happens is when you bring these two together and they've been skilled well or trained well, you get some type of movement, okay, between the two entities, their bodies, and it's almost like jazz musicians coming together, which is one of those reasons why jazz had always been associated with boxing for so many years, because you could take 4 or 5 guys and form a quartet or so and allow them to play the instruments that they play, and they can make beautiful music. And so in boxing, it's the same. You could take 2 guys. You could take a Mutt and Jeff matchup, which was what we saw with Fox and Maestre, okay, and they can give you a great fight because one guy might have a certain skill set and the other guy have a different skill set, and when they come together, the opposites can blend. It doesn't always happen that way, but what I'm giving you outside of saying that men should be able to just go and train the guys to go in and kill people in there, that's not the objective. The science of boxing always been to hit and not be hit as much as possible, but to hit and score cleanly and not to be hit and scored cleanly against is even more of what that should be. And that the fighter that's able to do these things best typically wins. Now, you take what I just said, and it even magnifies even more of what these judges' incompetence are, because they don't base their decisions on what I just explained to you. This is why you know that they don't belong. Yes, we are gifted sometimes with the excitement of someone who can perform and excite the masses with knockouts. That's just like every time you go to a baseball game, you are not going to see a home run, but people want to see the home run every time they go to the stadium, especially if it's their home team, because that's excitement to knock one out of the park. It's the same with boxing, but you see when an umpire calls the home run a foul ball, and it was clearly outside the flag leaving the stadium, you got a problem there, right? Of course you do. You might have had 2 or 3 men on base to make the difference in the game being won, right? What do you think this was Saturday night? Do you see how I pull it all together? This is why it's not necessary for the guys to be trained to go and kill the opponent. They're trained to win. And guess what? Mykal Fox did everything he was supposed to do to win. They decided not to give it to him. That's 2 different things.
Now, I think Freddie Ruger's point might be that maybe don't leave it in the hands of the judges and just start training to knock people out.
But I just gave you a reason and breakdown of why that's not possible.
Right.
Because you could send a guy out there trying to get him to knock someone out and he get knocked out. Because that's not what
Facts.
you do.
Facts. Yep. And there's very, very few examples in boxing history where a guy can just go on a tear and just knock every opponent out. It just, doesn't happen very often.
In other words, let's put it like this. And I was trying to be respectful in my chosen comments, but I'm just going to come back and put it like this. Freddie, why didn't Mike Tyson just go out there and knock Evander Holyfield out?
Right. Or Lennox Lewis.
I mean, he knocked out a lot of guys. Not everyone, but he knocked out a lot of guys. Why didn't he get his butt in there and knock out Mike Tyson, knock out Evander Holyfield? Why didn't Lennox Lewis knock out Evander Holyfield? I'm waiting.
Well, Freddie's
Sometimes that's
reply
not the
is,
answer. It's not the answer.
Freddie said, I agree, Stormy, but the corruption with the judges leaves me thinking that way. My favorite fighters historically were not total KO artists. I guess the situation just makes me sick.
That's why you guys have the power of email in today's social media status, okay? You can email these organizations and say, why are you guys continuing to put that particular judge, Mr. or Mrs. whoever, on the panel to judge fights when they are absolutely incompetent? Do you know 1 or 2 emails like that doesn't mean much, but when they start to get them by the hundreds and thousands, brother, you got something cooking there because they're paying attention. And then you make sure that you indicate in your email that I buy tickets to live events. I pay for pay-per-view on my television at home. I pay for the cable service that comes through my home. I will not continue to do these things as long as these organizations decide to hire these biased and incompetent individuals night in and night out, destroying the sport that I love with their corruption.
Yep.
You have to hold them to. Listen, man, when you buy food at a restaurant and they bring it to your table and there's something wrong, and it's like you don't just accept that and say, hey, this is not what I ordered or whatever. You say, hey, man, please, can you do it the correct way? You be nice to them because that they fixing your food in the back room. You don't want them messing over the food. It's just like, you understand what I'm saying. It's like you let people know what's not acceptable by exercising your right to do so. And it doesn't always have to be rude, but you be on point and you let them know that you can see what's happening here. That woman being married to a WBA official, that's a conflict of interest within itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And case in point here, back to what you were saying, Stormy, about why didn't Mike Tyson go in there and knock out Evander Holyfield? Another good example is if you train to just knock everyone out, well, you'll end up face down like Pacquiao did in the 4th fight against Marquez.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And if you go back and watch that 4th fight, Pacquiao, his whole objective is I got to finish this trilogy or this saga. And you can tell he was just attacking. And Marquez caught him. That is the sweet science. When you can weather the storm and land the perfect punch to put your opponent to sleep. And Marquez wasn't looking for the knockout. He was looking to win. And he found the right punch. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So my next question for you and everyone in the chat, Stormy, is let's go to the next point of interest and the next point of conversation that I think needs to have. And that is, where do we go from here? How should judges judge fights? How should the vetting process be? And on that note, referees as well. Now, I know, and you may be able to shed a little bit of light more on this because I've refereed some small fights here and there, mostly overseas. But to my knowledge, to be a referee varies from state to state. Some states require a license. Some states you can start with like kids and teenagers and kind of work your way up. And then as you go up into the higher levels, you have to get certain licenses and stuff like that. For judges, I'm not 100% certain on what the actual process is. So if you can shed light on that. But my thing is I don't want to go as far as saying every judge has to be a boxer before, because then you just narrow down the pool, right? There's only so many boxers in the world, amateur or pro, that says, oh, I'll go be a judge now. I mean, most retired boxers are with their families or become commentators or whatever. That suits them more because they love to talk about the sport. So, but there has to be a very strenuous education process that must be had, in my opinion, for judges who are judging two men or two women putting everything that they have into a fight, especially a world championship fight. That should be another level that you have to reach to be a judge. And I know that's how they do with referees. Only certain referees, there's a very small pool of referees who get these big world championship fights. But I'll be honest with you, Stormy, like there's certain referees out there that make me cringe, and Kenny Bayless is one of them. And sometimes I'm like, is this dude really a world championship caliber referee? And so I think that there needs to be a conversation about this. I know some people, even a couple people mentioned it in the chat here, where there should be like an automated system so there's no corruption when it comes to judging fights, use technology and things like that. Boxing is still kind of old school. There hasn't been much changes from the days of old where judges penciled in their scorecards. But I think there needs to be a conversation on what is the process, what should the process be, what should the qualifications be, and I'll just leave it at that. Like, what are your thoughts on that topic?
Well, first of all, and I do understand what you're getting at, but remember, I spoke of us all being a community out here. Some of us have better talents in certain areas than others. It is time to start utilizing those talents. One of the things that Boxing Conversations with Reggie Owens and myself have come up with is we've devised a manner of paying attention to judges in fights and referees in fights by taking note. When you have a match on the horizon, they always tell you who the judges are. We write those names down. We do the same with the referees. And the moment that we see something questionable, because it'll reveal itself. When we see something questionable from a particular bout, we check mark that person's name that had a questionable scorecard, or a referee who seemed to always be he always seems to be implementing himself in the midst of the action and stuff like that, or being too harsh on an individual. We take note of that. And when you take note, then you start checking, like, how many times has this person done this or had this offense? And then the judge, the same. They had a scorecard that was ridiculous in a fight a couple of months ago, and here they are again this past Saturday doing it again. And that's how you build your case, okay? Because you can't just do it off of one fight, right? You can't. But when you've had a track record, and Reggie and I have been keeping track of these people, some of the names you would be surprised, Divinesense and chat, that how many of these people are very consistent in their questionable bias in these bouts. We go back to the fight that took place between what's his name? Gabe Rosado and what's his name? The fighter, Danny Jacobs.
Danny Jacobs, yeah. All right.
That fight right there was one of the matches that we're talking about. Gabe Rosado won that fight. But those judges scored that fight for Danny Jacobs as if Danny Jacobs was a high-profile fighter who may have had something on the horizon, and they wanted to make sure he met his date and stuff like that. And now that wasn't the case with Danny Jacobs, but that's how they scored it, because this is what we've seen in the past of justifying a guy who you consider being up here and a guy that's being down there. But that's perception. What happened in the actual bout was Gabe Rosado fought him, and fought him well. to the degree that Danny Jacobs was doing particular tactics in the fight that Reggie and I both picked up on. He was trying to cut Rosado with his glove. He was raking it across his eyes and stuff, because there was a stretch where Gabe Rosado was having a lot of problems with scar tissue around his eyes being cut.
Yeah,
I
remember that. Yeah.
The thing about it is Gabe has fought such good fighters that he's gotten better, even in defeat. Okay. And when he came out there on that night against Jacobs, who was very lackluster, the judges did not give him fair play with the rounds that he was securing in the bank. Jacobs won the fight through the judges' eyes, but he didn't defeat Gabe Rosado. It's a difference. You see what I'm saying? So when you have it like that, we made note of that. And a couple of those judges have shown up again. Lo and behold, they've done things again. When we talk about this referee, Jack Reese, one of the things about him is he likes to impose himself in the fight. It doesn't matter which fight it is. Jack Reese thinks he's the star. And one of the things that I say to support that, after the Tyson Fury, Deontay Wilder first fight, he gave his account of what happened in that 12th round. This is what he said. And I'm not saying verbatim, but you can go back and check the tapes for yourself. But in general, this is what he was saying. He said that Fury was out. He could hear him making some kind of noise. Then he says he leaned in closer to him and he could see that he was out, but he was yelling the count to him and he woke up. Why didn't he just stop the fight? But let me finish with what I'm saying about Jack Reese. He said, I did what was good for boxing. Huh? This was my argument on that. I had said this. Now you tell me, Divine, I didn't know you then when that took place, but you could go back and look at my videos from back then when that fight happened. When I covered that fight and I talked about it in its aftermath, I said, for Jack Reese to say that he did what was best for boxing, this is what I took away from that. And chat, you can tell me what you think about what I'm about to say as well. I said that knowing the type of puncher that Deontay Wilder is and what he had done to guys like Dominic Breazeale, who's a very big man, just like Tyson Fury is, and Luis King Kong Ortiz, who's not as big as those two guys. But we've seen the damage that Deontay has been able to strike with his right hand. I said, what if Jack Reese, who woke Fury up and allowed him to continue that fight, what if Fury in the aftermath, fighters go to the hospital and get themselves checked out or whatever, right? And when they think that they feel that they need to, sometimes ringside doctors suggest it. But in Tyson Fury's case, I don't think they suggested that. But what if Tyson Fury would have went back to his hotel room that night, slipped into a coma, and was fighting for his life because of a brain bleed? Now, the reason I asked that question is this. He was out. He was unconscious. But Reese helped wake him up and then let him finish the round. Thank goodness it was the last round, but maybe another shot to a concussed man could have caused a brain bleed. Now you're dealing with a whole different situation. And if that would have turned tragic or fatal, the question would have been on Jack Reese, then why didn't you just stop it? Do you understand? But because it didn't happen and didn't play out that way, it makes it look more heroic that Tyson got up and finished the fight. Tyson Fury was unconscious, bro. His eyes were fixed to the lights in the ceiling. He didn't even see Jack Reese. But he was yelling at him and he woke him up and he looked over at him and he rolled over and got up. The fight was over, man. I've seen plenty of knockouts. He didn't deserve to be able to finish the fight under that auspice because you don't know what bad can happen. This is not me not wanting Tyson Fury to not win the fight. This is me looking at the health factor. I said the same thing when Teddy Atlas kept sending Gavaskic out there against Bitterbeef, when 2 rounds earlier he was telling Teddy he didn't want to continue to fight because Bitterbeef was hurting him out there. And Teddy was giving him one of those heroic speeches. We're firemen and we got to put out the fire and this and that. And Gavaskic didn't want to go back out there. And Bitterbeef was beating the crap out of him. And guess what ended up happening? Gavaskic had a brain bleed. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm speaking from a position of experience here. I'm not speaking for favoritism for fighters. We saw Buddy McGirt save his guy who still went into distress. When he stopped that fight with his fighter, who he just looked at him, he said, man, I can't put you out there. You're not looking good. Buddy was merciful, and the young man still had difficulty. It still ended up bad. But do you see, it's rather that Buddy did what he did than to have the guy slumping over in a corner or something like we saw with Gerald McClellan against Nigel Benn.
Now, Stormy, let me ask you a real quick question on this very issue that you're bringing up. Because there's people lurking, they're watching, they can't comment because they got to be subscribed. So what would your answer be to those who say, well, why did people get so upset with Mark Breland throwing in the towel when Deontay was clearly getting, hit with clean shots and didn't have his legs?
What is my what now? Ask me that.
What is your response to that? Because that's what they're going to say. So if we're going to say that, referees and corners and coaches need to take responsibility and protect their fighters. I'm playing devil's advocate, and I've dealt with these people before, and I guarantee you that's what they'll come at you with.
Well, I don't worry about what people come at me with because I can only state regarding the Mark Breland and Deontay Wilder case is that everyone in Deontay Wilder's camp understood what the champion has said is the rule of thumb for him in a match. You don't throw the towel in under any auspice. If he threw the towel in, he was defying what his boss had told him not to do.
Which I agree with.
Huh?
Which I agree with. Yeah.
Right. And if he was disobeying the authority of his employer, then he should be terminated based on that. It's just that after everything else was discovered in the aftermath, that it really makes it look even worse, right? But it's like at the time that it was done, Breland was operating on his own judgment and not on Deontay's. And you can't tell me that he was operating to Deontay's best interest, because of even during the fight, there were certain things that I didn't see from Breland as a chief cornerman to put Deontay in a position that he might be better going forward in the fight. I'll give you an example. It was Breland himself who went across to the UK and he conducted an interview. Are you aware of that, Divinesense?
Yep.
Okay. Well, he went over there and he began to crap on Wilder about a different assortment of things. But one of the things he said was he didn't handle the water. Do you remember him saying that?
Yep.
But there's video of him in between rounds giving Deontay Wilder
the whole damn fight. The whole damn fight.
Matter of fact,
broke it down.
If you look at, because I watched your breakdown of the fight recently, just last week, right? And I noticed that after the first round, the first thing Breland was doing was giving him water before he even sat down on the bench.
Yeah.
Check this out. If Wilder's legs weren't under him and he was like kind of looking maybe a little out of it, one of the things the cornerman is supposed to do is refreshing his fighter. You don't refreshing your fighter by giving him water. I've worked corners.
Yep.
You refreshing you refreshing your charge by giving them ice treatment in certain areas on their body.
Yes.
There's a certain place on the back of the head where you can apply ice. There's a certain place on the back of the neck, just above the spine, where you can apply ice. There's a certain place in the center of your back that you can apply ice. There's a certain place in the bottom of your back, just above your tailbone, where you can apply ice. You can put ice down the trunks of a guy. You can rub the ice pack across his solar plexus in his chest, okay, and just across up under the neck bone, right at the collarbone, and of course across the face. You want to get that ice. That's all refreshing. It'll wake a guy up, believe me.
But check this. Like I've worked as an assistant in corners as well, and I've seen the head trainer straight up take water, like cold ice water, and just throw it on a fighter in his face.
Yeah,
just
you could do that as well. But what I'm saying is, when you've got the ice packs and stuff like you're supposed to have, like there are cornermen that are really ready and prepped. But I'm giving the examples of things that he could have done to refresh Deontay, but he didn't. Notice that the first thing he was doing was giving him water. If there was something wrong with Deontay Wilder's water, giving him more of it wasn't going to help him.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Now, I just gave you something that nobody else has thought about. Because I said that I noticed upon review during your re-showing and reaccounting of the fight that was one of the first things he was doing to Deontay each and every time he was coming back.
Did you see what I pointed out with JD's was holding a completely different water bottle to what Mark Breland was holding?
Yes.
Two different brands, two different
and the water bottle that Breland was holding looks a lot like the one that Tyson Fury's cornerman was trying to offer him at the press conference after the fight, when Tyson Fury asked him, "Where'd you get that from?" And he pointed over there, and he was like, "No," and he handed it back to him. And Shelly Finkel was sitting right next to Tyson Fury at that press conference in the aftermath. So listen, man, the more that you look at things, and you could break it down, but know what you're looking at. Like I said, if I needed to refresh my guy, I would have had that ice on him. I would have told everybody in the corner that's working as a second, I would say, hey, I need tons of ice. Bring me some ice. Get me some ice up here. So when he comes back from this round, I got to wake him up. I got to get him up out of this part of what he's going through. And water ain't necessarily going to do it.
No.
And now we find out that there could have been tainted water, but that's the first thing that Breland was giving him too. Come on.
But what's up? What else is weird is normally a trainer or a coach will ask the fighter, "How you doing? How you feeling?"
They didn't have that type of rapport. They didn't have that type of rapport. That's why I know that Breland wasn't working at his optimum and in the best interest of Wilder. You see what I'm saying? Listen, man, when you work corners, I have sat up and talked with Reggie about this a lot because we do our show together. But there are a number of things that a trainer can do when he and his fighter are in unison, okay? This is why I'm loving what I'm seeing from Malik Scott, because Malik Scott has made a connection to Deontay Wilder, and he's got Deontay feeling alive. That's a great thing. When your trainer has your ear like that or whatever, you'll go out and run through walls. All you got to do is look at the best of the football coaches. They do the same thing for their teams. You got guys who will lay down in front of a bus for a coach because they really believe in what he's doing for and with them. You understand?
Facts.
So that's how that operates. When a fighter can connect psychologically with his trainer, there was a breach of that between he and Breland. But I will tell you this, if Breland were operating in his best interest, and he would have said certain things, done certain things, Deontay would have responded in the affirmative. But he didn't, because that's not what Breland was doing.
Because he was looking for his scapegoat. He was looking for the right time to throw in the towel. Because if you're really concerned about your fighter, Wilder was in trouble by the end of the second round. And you got to go up to him and be like, "Hey, What's going on? How you feeling? You know, stretch his legs out, rub his legs out, put ice on him. You know, talk to your fighter. And that when I rewound the tape and I was looking at this type of stuff, because when you're in the heat of the moment and you're watching the fight live, I mean, you're not invested in that. You're just invested in the adrenaline of the fight. But I mean, I saw stuff that I always catch something different every time I go back anyways, but working the corner, and I think this is a very interesting and intriguing topic because you've worked corners before. I've been involved in corners, and it wasn't anything close to how a traditional corner operates with their fighter. Not even close, especially when that fighter is not looking himself or herself, right? It doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. And all of the spiked water, put all that to the side. Just the simple mechanics of how Mark Breland was acting in the corner, right, is enough to be like, that's interesting. That is very interesting. There were times in that fight in the corner where Mark Breland didn't even say a word. JD's was whispering things in his ear because he was the one applying the ice pack. But Mark Breland wasn't even saying a word, just standing in front of him and offering him water. So one thing you can't deny is that they're obviously having issues. Like you said, there's a lost connection there. And so, you know, we've seen Teddy Atlas, for example, scream bloody murder in fighters' face to wake them up. Case in point, Timothy Bradley, right? In the whole fireman speech. You know, we love the fire. We operate in the fire, you know. So we've seen many different dynamics between and relationships between coaches / trainers and fighters. And we didn't see that in the second fight. And so if you're Deontay Wilder, how are you supposed to react after the fight is said and done and you've lost your title, a devastating defeat? How are you supposed to go back and think about shit?
There are things that a trainer can do when his fighter is not focused, when his fighter is kind of like, let's just say a guy got hit with a great shot and he's on Queer Street, and you recognize in between the 60 seconds 60 seconds or less that you have in between rounds to revive your fighter. There's something that a trainer can do, and that's one of the things that all trainers are supposed to have a grip on. But there are things that you can do to get your guy awake and ready, you know, to go back out there. And the thing you want to do is to give him at least, I always say, at least a minimum of 3 things to carry out when that bell rings. But you want him to be able to do at least one of them, you know,
right,
and have it serve its purpose. Now, one of the things that Wilder could have done, because early on, and I'm going off of me watching your fight breakdown of fight number 2, one of the things he could have done early on was to go out there and meet Fury in the center of the ring. And when they got close to one another, wrap Fury up and start walking him around in a circle, holding him very tightly in a clinch until the ref separates them. And what that would do is it would slow down a lot of the aggression that Fury was trying to mount.
right.
Okay. And it would buy Deontay Wilder time to try to get his legs back under him. Now, mind you, like I said, not giving him water, but giving him that ice in between rounds on his body, in certain areas on his body, to wake him up and refreshing him. Sometimes even a coach can cheat. They've done things, you know, a little smelling salt come out of somewhere, and they ain't supposed to have it, but they do. You know what I mean? And wake the guy up, and it'd be like, okay, now you go out there and you hit that guy with your right hand right in the pit of his stomach, and you tie him up, put your arm around his neck and pull his head down into you until the ref comes, and make the ref break you guys. Don't just let him go, make him break you. And then when you do break, step around the ref, make him reset, start all over again. You give him instructions. Breland wasn't doing any of that. He wasn't doing any of that. And then when he did begin, meaning Fury, began to put Wilder in like that guillotine hold and putting him down, I would have told Wilder between rounds, I would say, hit him hard as you can in the cup. Hit him hard as you can in the cup.
He'll learn.
The ref can't say too much to you because he's holding your head down. But when you throw that punch, you make sure that he's going to question if he have children after tonight. You understand? Because you send a message. This is a fight. And you have to be prepared to tell your charge what he needs to know. And then when you get him back to the round, say, hey, we got him that round. You ready now? You ready to go out there and do what we prepared to do? It's like, dude, I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and there's nothing taking place in the corner.
Yeah. That insanity.
That right there, if you want to see me really get upset about some stuff, that's when these coaches who don't do their job, don't earn their keep or whatever, are constantly hanging on to fighters. Because I was like, this guy should have been dismissed a long time ago. But everything kind of came to a head in that fight. And I don't like that it came to a head in that fight because it happened to be the fight that Deontay lost and all of this.
Right.
But I would have dismissed Breland a long time ago for a different variety of reasons. But on that night, he should have been let go because he defied what he was told from his employer about that towel situation.
Correct. And in the interview with him and 78 Sports, he did say, like, a lot of people told me to let go of Breland, but I was trying to do the right thing, be the better man, and help the man out. And I didn't want to go out like that or have him go out like that. So he passed his better judgment, and those of his peers decided to hold on to Breland, and it came back to bite him in the ass. Lesson learned. Lesson learned. And you can see the refreshment, right? When he's with Malik Scott. Like you said, he feels alive. He's alive now. He feels like this man understands me. This man listens to me. This man cares about me. This man wants to help me. And I got to be honest, I like the idea of having a fellow heavyweight hold mitts because you have that height similarity.
He doesn't have to hold anything back.
Exactly.
Because Breland was a small, frail guy in comparison to
absolutely.
Wilder, so he couldn't do mitt work with him and everything. It would have to be a heavyweight type individual to do it. But not only that, but Malik has been there. Malik has gone through it. He knows exactly
as a heavyweight
what it's like. Exactly.
Yep. As a heavyweight, yeah. But I want to get back to real quick what we were talking about with Jack Reese, because I did pull up an article here. I'm not sure if you see it up on the screen.
Yeah, I see it.
But before I do that, I just want to get to X Outlaw with a big super chat here. He says, if Fury tries to cheat again, what cheating methods / options are left? Since all eyes will be on Fury's gloves, is he going to be juiced up knowing the commission got his back? To be completely honest with you, X Outlaw, and thank you for the super chat. It means a lot. Hopefully you're still in the chat because to be quite honest with you, Stormy and I were cooking there for a moment. But this is why I always say that I feel like the fight will happen, because I just feel that Fury has so much to risk and literally nothing to gain by trying to back out. And on top of that, there is no more room really for any other controversies because everything has been put at the forefront, and Fury knows this. So gloves, water, ring walk, referee, everything will be fine-tuned. I guarantee you that, because there's no way that PBC and the Boxing Commission is going to take the risk of having another possible controversy. Now, as far as the juiced up and PEDs, and I've heard about the human growth hormone, that the conspiracy right now that I've heard is that he's on it now currently, or he was on it, and this is why he needed the extra time to cycle out of it. And I don't know if that's true or not, But what I do know is that October 9th is coming and it is happening. And by that time, even if he was cycling on any PED, I don't think he'll be on it by then because, again, it's just too much of a risk with all eyes on him.
Allow me
so
to share something with that too.
yes, sir.
If he can't bring a gun in the ring with him, he won't win. Because he could. No, I'm serious. Because
I hear you.
He has. See, listen. And for those of you out there that love Fury and whatnot, and think that Fury really kicked Deontay's behind and all of that, let me just offer something here. This is from the street, okay? If you know a guy slighted you and got the better of you by cheating and doing a number on you, and then you have a chance to face that individual again, knowing what he did, okay, and how he was allowed to possibly, get away with certain aspects of getting over on you and everything, and maybe even been assisted somewhat. But you get a chance for a reprieve, huh? Now, going in, your alert antenna is wide open. But not only that, payback's a mother, as they say, right? So it's like you have a different disposition going in. It's almost like no matter what they throw, no matter what they shoot at you, no matter what they, it's like you will walk through fire literally to get the job done. I'll give you an example of that. Joe Frazier, when he fought Ali for the first time, Ali was calling Joe Uncle Tom and all of that stuff. And, this was before the guerrilla comments, because the guerrilla comments came later with the Thriller in Manila. But early on, Ali turned it into something ugly by trying to say that Joe Frazier was the white man's black man, right? And then he was like, I'm the real black man representative and this and that. And Joe really didn't like that at all, because Joe was like, I gave this guy help when he wasn't boxing. I paid him, paid his bills, and I helped him out with money and stuff. And now the dude treating me like this. So on that night, Joe Frazier absorbed an astronomical, I should say, amount of punishment. But he beat Ali. He beat him.
Left hook.
And put him on his behind. You understand? So Deontay knows history. He knows it. And we've had some information exchanged behind the scenes that what he's looking at as far as to keep himself mentally adjusted to what he's going to face. This is a new man. Okay?
100%.
So
100%.
Tyson Fury could use all the PEDs he won't. It ain't going to make a difference. It's not. It's like what's fair. Coming is coming. You understand? It's just like when you're a small kid and your dad say, wait till I get home. I'm going to beat that butt. And you be like, oh, I hope he never come home. You understand? Right. But he's coming home.
Oh, hide in the closet.
He's coming home and you got to face it. It's the same kind of situation. But it's a shame that, I'm going to say this and I'll be done with the comment. It's a shame that what happened in the second fight had to happen to flip that switch for Deontay. Because had he had this type of mindset before the first fight, maybe we wouldn't even be talking about a trilogy, because again, there are a lot of fighters who fought with this mental aspect and approach to what they're facing out there. And he was just too much of a nice guy,
Yes.
And he's a good fighter, knocking people out and everything. But now he's a different person. And I've said this before, whether it's Fury or if it's Fury and then it's going to be whoever comes after, woe to those men that got to get in there with him, because this is not going to be the same guy anymore. I guarantee you that.
Yep. Same thing I've been saying. And it's him and what he's went through. As you said, a changed man, a new objective, a new mission. And on top of that, the training. You can see it in the training. The changes, the improvements, sharpening his skills. There is a plan. There is none of this, oh, I'm just angry and I'm going to go in there and swing like crazy. No, there is a plan of attack, and it will be executed. I'm telling these people out here in the streets every day, Stormy, like, you don't understand what's coming. Laugh all you want. You're going to have your moment. You're going to have your 9 months of giggling and chuckling and dancing around. Look at Fury. He's amazing. You know, he beat the scary bronze bomber. You're going to have your moment, but it's going to cease. And everyone who has been supporting Deontay and speaking the truth, then it's our time. It'll be our time to come on here and chuckle and giggle and say, yeah, we told you so. And guess what? All those people, they're going to disappear. What are they going to say? What are they going to say? Because let's be honest, Fury's going to get
a surprise, bro. There's going to be a surprise because
for sure.
Listen, no, I'm talking about there's something people talk about Wilder, the right hand, right? And Fury's camp is really bought into that crap about, oh, he's a one-trick pony and this and that. Divine, I've been saying this for years about Deontay Wilder. I said that I believe that Deontay can hit equally as hard with his left as he can with his right. You know why? Because he's one of those Southern-born genetic brothers that he's just country strong like that. But it wasn't developed. It wasn't developed for him to throw it. Now he's no longer a one-trick pony because he's working everything off of that left now and mixing the left in with everything else. You can't guard your whole entire body and head from everything. You understand? But he's now punching with purpose with his left. Okay? It's not probing, it's not range finding and stuff like that. It's a weapon.
And you see what Malik Scott is working on with him is that left hook to the body. That's a liver shot, people.
And
that's a liver shot.
Tommy Hearns, who I've often likened Deontay to because of their build, is similar. That Tommy's best punch outside his right hand was his left hook to the body. The way he was beating the crap out of Iran Barkley before Barkley threw that punch from hell to knock him out. He had both eyes cut and Barkley was battered. He was on his way to a stoppage of Barkley. You understand? And he was throwing left hooks to Barkley's body that was making Barkley double over in pain.
Listen, I'll never forget a quote. Just real quick on Tommy Hearns. I'll never forget a quote that Mike Tyson said soon after he was, recently retired. And someone was interviewing Mike Tyson. They're talking about power. And they're saying, Mike, why do you got so much power? And he said, well, it's simple. Some people are just born to have power, just like some people are born to have a chin. You can't really teach power. Either you have it or you don't. You can be taught to refine it and use it properly, which is the case of Deontay and also Mike. Mike was just born a powerhouse. And he was brought in and he was taught the skills of the sweet science. And then he became a devastating monster in the heavyweight division. And he said about Tommy Hearns, he said, a perfect example is Tommy Hearns. The man was born with power. Tommy Hearns was a guy who would spar light heavyweights and cruiserweights and heavyweights. Mike Tyson said that. I've seen Tommy Hearns in the gym sparring cruiserweights because he just had that pop. And cruiserweights like to spar Tommy because he forced them to move. He forced the cruiserweights to chase him and try to, force them to use their footwork. And Tommy would just be popping in and out and landing big shots. And it felt like a heavyweight. And so I just want to throw that out there because I saw that you were getting on your soapbox a little bit about Tommy Hearns. And I love me some Tommy Hearns.
Tommy doesn't
best believe that.
He doesn't get enough of the credit that he deserves as the champion and fighter he was, man. Tommy Hearns, and we talk about him on the Three Wise Men all the time because let me tell you, he was the personification of a true champion and warrior spirit out there. Whether he, was favored in a fight or not, he would fight and he would defeat guys, and he showed the vulnerability of man, being a person who was defeated himself, but the defeats never got him down. He just came back and became champ again. That's what you want at the end of the day. And Tommy represented that in the most best of ways. My hat is always off to Tommy Hearns for what he's accomplished in the sport of boxing.
Absolutely. But those of you who are just joining the chat, we've been chopping it up now for almost an hour and a half. So if you just joined, we're kind of bouncing around many different topics. Obviously, the main topic and the title of the live stream today is, has to do with corruption. And obviously, most recently, we discovered and witnessed a recent robbery of Mykal Fox. If you guys haven't watched that fight, I implore you to go on YouTube and watch it, witness it for yourself. And we've just been bringing up different examples of corruption and ways how we can fix it and things like that. And the conversation continues here. A part of that was Stormy brought up Jack Reese, and in particular, the knockdown in the first fight between Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. I've said on numerous occasions, okay, that there's no doubt, you can't dispute it. Deontay hit him so hard with the right hand and followed it up with a left hook right to the jaw as Fury was falling backwards. Picture perfect shot. His head slammed off the canvas, and you can see his eyes roll to the back of his head. He was out. Now, how he was even able to move at all, only God knows. But you can see in this picture right here that I have displayed here, Jack Reese above Tyson. We can't see Tyson's eyes, unfortunately. But to Stormy's point, he was saying that he basically woke up Tyson. He made sure that he woke up and gave him a chance to get up. Now, I will say this about Jack Reese. And I don't know very much about him per se. I'm very critical of referees a lot of the times. But I will say about Jack Reese, from what I've noticed in a lot of his fights, is that he is consistent in regards to how he allows fighters to recover. Now, that's not necessarily a good thing. I think there needs to be a consistency in refereeing, that if you get knocked down, you check over ringside, see where the count is at, and you pick up that count, and if it reaches 10, you're out. If you're out, your eyes are rolled back in the back of your head, and you're not even at 6 or 7, the fight should probably be called off. But if you go back and watch a lot of Jack Reese's fights, he does this all the time. And he has a thing where a fighter will get up at 7 or 8, and he'll say, walk over there. Now come back. Now give me your gloves. It's like an extra added 5 seconds that he gives fighters. Now, he'll tell you, oh, that's my style. And that's good for boxing because it gives a fighter a chance to fight back or whatever. Now, Jack Reese strikes me as a gentleman he's kind of old school. And he probably in the whole, he's a fight fan. You can tell the way he talks about it. He's a fight fan. And that makes sense to what Stormy said. He's involved in the fight too much. And I think it's because he's such a big fight fan. And so I didn't know what to think about the count when I was watching it live, because I thought, that's it. It's over. And then when he got up, I was like, I looked at my boys. I was like, what just happened? And it took, days and weeks later where people started saying, hey, it was a long count. He was knocked out and things like that. Now let's look at this article and see what it says. This is from fightsports.tv. All right. And this is, I guess it's a quote from Wilder himself. Wilder saying Fury was given favoritism. So let's read real quickly because this does tie into the corruption of boxing, judges and referees. So, WBC heavyweight champion. Obviously, guys, this is an older article because this is after the first fight. Heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder feels the referee, judges, and commentators were not as impartial as they should have been when he fought Tyson Fury. Many in the boxing community felt Fury deserved the nod when the pair met in December in 2018. Now, that's where I will draw the line. We can go back and forth and talk about Jack Reese's actions, but to say that Fury won the fight is absolutely ludicrous. Continuing on here. But the bout was ruled a split draw. I'm going to skip over this a little bit. Okay. Wilder feels the ref and judges for the fight, as well as the commentators, were sympathetic and partial towards Fury, thanks to Fury's comeback from alcoholism, addiction, and depression that spoiled his first heavyweight title reign. This is a quote. Look at when I fight other guys. Even with the Luis Ortiz fights, there's always something pushed through the challenger and not me, Wilder said. There's always something good said about them, and it's always what I should be doing or not be doing. That I do agree with, by the way. It's never bigging me up. No one ever sees the greatness of what I'm doing until I just pop somebody in the middle of their sentence complimenting the other opponent. When you have it like that, you paint a narrative to other people that's on the outside looking in. They say, oh, he, Wilder, got beat 10-2. When the fans, don't even know what the hell they are looking at. They don't even know how to score a card. I thank God that I had smart judges to read through the things Fury was doing because he can also egg on the judge's decision with all, his dancing and his hands behind his back and all that stuff. Last sentence here. When Fury does at the end of the round, all the taunting, them only tactics win the round over when you, I'm not sure if I read that right. Tactics win the round over when you never won. The article's not written correctly. It's trying to make people say, oh, I'm still here. I won. I got more energy. So that's a quote from Deontay Wilder about the first fight. And I pretty much wholeheartedly agree with it. It makes sense to me on why Wilder would feel that way. So, Stormy, I'll allow you a rebuttal about Jack Reese if you want, or we can leave it as is. But also about the article here and Deontay's own words about him feeling that he was impartial. He felt that the judges were swayed by Tyson's recovery from addiction. They didn't want to see him lose, and it swayed their decision-making when judging the fight. And, of course, all the taunting and getting the crowd behind it and all that different stuff. Do you pretty much agree with what Wilder said there?
Well, I do believe that there's a consensus about Wilder that the masses, meaning professional journalists, professional trainers, analysts, and people who talk the sport of boxing over the media, that Wilder has been lucky to get in there and knock a lot of guys out and whatnot. And therefore there's a bias because he didn't have an extensive, amateur background like most typical fighters that find themselves at the top of the sport. And I do believe that when speaking of him, because his technique has been raw at a lot of times when he's gotten people in trouble and he kind of goes wild on them and things like that, they don't think that a person who from the outside looking in judges that as that's kind of sloppy. It shouldn't, he should be more polished in what he's doing or whatever, instead of just acknowledging him for what he's getting done. And so when Wilder speaks on that, he's speaking from a standpoint of he's recognizing that they don't like what he's doing, because even guys who have been trained up straight down the line, you know, as an arrow, they haven't been as successful as him. So it's like there's a bias there. When you take a trainer in particular that says, oh, he's doing it all wrong or whatever, but he's having success. And he understands that, okay? But at the same time, no one wants to give him the credit for what he has accomplished. And instead of looking at it as what he doesn't do or whatever, they don't label this as unorthodox. They just say that it's sloppy, it's not professional or whatever, when it is unorthodox. He's an athlete who found heavyweight boxing and has been able to compete at that on the highest of levels. Imagine had he been trained from a kid. He probably would have had a body on his record by now, because he's that gifted.
Yeah.
Listen, Evander Holyfield is my favorite fighter. Okay. And I heard Evander speak highly of Deontay Wilder on a couple of occasions. One was when he said in the first fight against Luis King Kong Ortiz, he said Ortiz hit Wilder, got him in some trouble, and Wilder was smart enough to go at Ortiz and tie him up to slow down the momentum. He said that was something that you can't teach fighters. He said you could tell them in the gym what they should do, but it's a natural response and reaction from the individual when it happens, how he responds. He said he saw that, and that's when he knew that Deontay was a real championship caliber fighter, because he went after Ortiz to tie him up, to slow down the momentum and gather his bearings and everything, and he came back and knocked the guy out. The second compliment was, he was like, I've never seen a man punch so hard that he hit a guy in the forehead and knock him out. He was like, your forehead is like one of the, hardest bones in your body, and it protects your brain. That's why the skull is so hard up here. He was like, but Deontay hit guys in the forehead and knock them out. And Evander expressed some amazement about that, because, he's been in with some of the biggest punches of the modern day era during his career. So when you take it from someone like he, who has faced the best that the sport can offer, and he's offering that type of compliment to a fighter like Wilder, then I'd rather listen to a man who's gone through it and been and come out successfully and everything else like Evander, than to listen to all of those other critics and pundits, because they've never taken a punch in their life. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I come away with. And then Evander gave him another compliment by saying, like, hey, you don't lose what you know how to do as far as being a fighter in one night. And he said in that second fight with Fury, something was wrong with Wilder. He's like, I don't know what it was, but you could clearly see that he wasn't himself. Now that's coming from Evander.
Right.
So listen, man, Evander speaks the truth. You understand? He ain't got a dog in the race. But
yeah,
all of that being said, when you talk about a referee like Jack Reese, who imposes himself on the fight too much, I think at the end of the day, that's wrong, because he's doing something on his own accord, but not under the umbrella and rules of what a referee should do. Think about the fight number one, 12th round. Wilder puts him down early in the round. The guy is totally out. Jack Reese could have looked at that man and said, whoa, you understand? Even after counting 2, 3, his eyes are fixed. Oh, it's over. Not because, we need to give Wilder a victory, but because of the assessment. And I gave a more detailed explanation of that earlier in this conversation. But it's like he was closer than anybody. He could see the man was unconscious.
Yeah.
Wave the fight off. You understand?
We've seen it many times. More so referees waving it off than the other way around.
Yeah,
right?
And I've seen Jack Reese go out there and wave something off too early as well. So I've seen it, man. You said he's kind of consistent. I kind of disagree with that. I say he's very inconsistent because I've seen him impose himself, and I've seen him allow other things to take place where he seems to be granting favor. I don't care for Jack Reese at all. And then when I heard him say out of his own mouth after that first fight, I feel like I did what was best for boxing. Dude, you could get out of here with that. Because who are you to judge what's best for boxing?
Yeah. So would you rather have Kenny Bayless?
Kenny Bayless sucks. He's a horrible referee. And the thing about it is,
Jack
Reese referees a fight well. It's the decisions that he makes when it's time to either stop something or to let it go. That's when he gets off court. But as far as refereeing, making sure people are not holding too much and things like that, fighting within the rules, that's okay. But Kenny Bayless, that dude, I don't know what's up with him, but I don't care for him at all. I don't care for him at all. We used to have a tremendous referee that you guys could go back and watch this guy. He's no longer with us, but Mitch Halpern was one of the best referees I had ever seen. He refereed the first Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield fight. Mitch Halpern was a great referee, man. And unfortunately, we lost him to suicide. But he was one of the best referees I had ever seen, in this modern time. You go back and watch how he took control of fights. I remember in that first fight between Tyson and Holyfield, he wouldn't let Mike be dirty, and he wouldn't let Evander retaliate off of Mike being dirty. He was like, okay, Evander, knock that off, and Evander looked at him like, what? And stepped away. But it's like, he took control. And it wasn't long after that he passed away. But a tremendous referee for the sport, Mitch Halpern was. Really liked that guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think right now the discussion is, I would say, mostly concerning the judges. But unfortunately, referees do sometimes play a role, rather it's corruption, rather it's favoritism, rather it's, being too involved in the fight, being too much of a fight fan, whatever the case may be. I was just mentioning that I can't recall every fight that Jack Reese refereed, but I have seen him on numerous occasions of giving knockdown fighters a lot of time to recover. But if you were to tell me that he called fights off early, I wouldn't argue that point. It's been a long time. I can't really think of a referee where I was like, man, this referee is phenomenal. I mean, we have some okay refs, but look, I want to say that being a ref is not an easy job. Let me just put that out there. It is not an easy job, and very few people want to do it. You have a lot of responsibility on your shoulders, and if you make it up high enough to referee a heavyweight championship bout, or any championship bout for that matter, you're the third man in the ring. So if you make a mistake, it's going to show, and it's a very difficult position to have. I've refereed even basketball games. I mean, even then, it's like you got parents screaming at you, and you can never do anything right, and there's always going to be somebody that hates you. You can never do it perfectly. But with that being said, I want to go ahead and remind people, because I think there are many different backgrounds of people's boxing knowledge. Maybe some of you have just become boxing fans recently, or maybe you consider yourself just a recreational fan, or there might be some people in the chat that are real diehard fans. But for the sake of conversation, I want to just throw out a couple other scenarios and fights where judges scored the fight horribly. And I'll use one that's relatively recent, and I'll use another one that's a bit later down the line. The first one I want to show and share with you guys, I mentioned it to Stormy behind the scenes before we went on live, is the Paul Williams Erislandy Lara fight. And if you guys were around that time watching boxing and you remember that fight, you remember how terribly that fight was scored. I distinctly remember that fight. And I was telling Stormy that was the first fight that popped in my head when we watched the Mykal Fox fight, and it took me back to the Erislandy Lara and Paul Williams. If you guys don't know who Paul Williams is, he was a phenomenal fighter and very similar, oddly enough, to Mykal Fox in the sense of being very tall, very lean, and a great puncher and very good boxing skills and the ability to, at six, I'm not sure, remember what his height was exactly, but definitely over 6 foot, to duck underneath shots and give good shots and things like that. He's unfortunately in a wheelchair at the moment. I believe he had a car accident, Stormy? I think he had a car accident, right? Which left him paralyzed, I believe, from the waist down. But anyways, what I want to read just real quickly is an article that was written by ESPN about the fight, okay, between Erislandy Lara and Paul Williams. The title of the article is 3 Judges Banned by State. Okay, the fallout from the controversial decision in the Paul Williams Erislandy Lara junior middleweight bout continued Wednesday when the New Jersey State Athletic Control Board took the highly unusual action of indefinitely suspending the 3 judges who worked the 12-round bout. All 3 judges were indefinitely suspended. Williams was given a heavily criticized majority decision victory as judges Hilton Whitaker scored it 115-114, Don Givens scored it 116-114, scored it for Williams, and only one judge, I believe, scored it a draw, Al Bennett, at 114-114. That fight, if you guys didn't know, was aired on HBO at the Boardwalks Hall ballroom. So there you guys have it. And just to look at the CompuBox just real quick, CompuBox statistics were also telling Williams was credited with landing 200 of 1,047 punches, 19%. Lara was credited with landing 224 of only 530 punches, which is 42%. Now, Stormy and I have already pointed out the art of boxing is hit and not get hit. All right, so the judges probably said, oh, well, it looked like Paul Williams was really busy. He was throwing a lot of punches. He threw 1,000 punches, but he landed 19%. And so this is just a relatively recent decision that was made. And, of course, as I mentioned earlier, all 3 judges were indefinitely suspended. All right. But that's a loss nonetheless on Lara's record. Okay, so that is one that I wanted to point out. The next one I wanted to point out is one that's a little bit later for all of you boxing history buffs out there. First, I want to give a shout out to Pull Counter Boxing. Good to see you, man. A longtime subscriber of mine from way back in the day. Pull Counter says, what up, Divine and StormyB? StormyB, man. Blue Blood will be on my live stream. I would love to have all of you guys to join us. You guys are on right now? Or later today? I don't know if I can make it. I'm closing in on 1 a.m. where I'm at. But Stormy might do it if Stormy's down. But what I want to do real quick is throw another article out there, as I said, for all the boxing history buffs out there. And that is, I'm sure Stormy will be privy to this one. And that is Joe Lewis versus Jersey Joe Walcott, their first fight all the way back on December 5th, 1947. Okay, so this was a notorious fight between the two that a lot of people got very upset at. This is an article about that fight right here. Fight City, December 5th, 1947. Lewis Walcott, the first fight. Bad decisions, robberies, ridiculous scorecards. Maybe nothing sickens a fight fan more than judges rendering a final verdict which makes a mockery of a hard-fought contest. So you guys can go back and look at it. I believe the fight was scored for Joe Lewis, even though Archie Moore definitely outlanded and outpunched Joe Lewis in this bout. And that just goes and tells you how long this has been going on. All right, this is 1947, and you see an article here being written about it. Now, I can go all day long about judges corrupting scorecards. I believe Pernell Whitaker has been involved in at least two. He was involved, I believe, in one with Julio Cesar Chavez, and another one with what's the guy's name? Ramirez, I believe his last name was Ramirez. And so just Pernell himself was involved in two during his career. And, Pernell was obviously a very defensive and elusive fighter. And that's another thing I want to bring up, Stormy, is, for me, I'm all about the sweet science, right? And as much as I like to watch two guys go head-to-head, brawlers, punch it out, see who's the better puncher, I'm not going to lie. I don't mind watching it, but I am an ardent supporter and true supporter of the sweet science. I like to see a fighter who can be elusive, land punches, not get hit with clean punches, and it doesn't matter to me if it's if he gets a knockout or if it's a 12-round decision. At the end of the day, if it's a 12-round decision of a beautiful boxing display, I'm getting my money's worth regardless if there's a knockout or not, because I'm watching the beautiful sport be displayed before my eyes. So Pernell Whitaker was a guy like that. So when you have a guy who is very active, like Julio Cesar Chavez is a very active fighter, constantly coming forward, attacking the body. And sometimes this is where I think there's an issue with judges, where it seems like they have a difficult time a lot of times through boxing history to differentiate. How do you judge a fighter who is very active but not really landing compared to a guy who is elusive, throwing less but landing more? Right? We've talked about this over the years when it came to Floyd Mayweather. Right? Floyd Mayweather has been involved with a lot of these different conversations because he doesn't throw enough, even though he's one of the most accurate punchers of all time. And so it becomes a little bit subjective, but at the end of the day, like Stormy pointed out, the art of the sport is and should be to hit and not get hit. So I think there is an issue with judges perhaps being too involved and too emotionally invested in a fight. We have that scenario. And also what happened recently, that a judge is somehow the wife of somebody on the WBA, is actually a racist as well. So that's another factor. But I think that it can go both ways. I think there are many situations where judges are persuaded by the crowd, and they get mesmerized by a lot of punches being thrown, and they're not be able to differentiate a blocked punch and a punch that lands. If you get a fighter like Manny Pacquiao, right? He's throwing punches all the time. He's notorious for throwing over 1,000 punches a fight, especially in his younger days. No problem. 1,000 punches, right? Sometimes 100 punches in a round, if not more. And he's fought fighters who have defended quite well, but Manny will get a nod because he's active, even though the fighter is blocking a lot of the shots. Now, last point I want to make on that is, and I'll let Stormy chime in here, is what I'm not saying is like when Manny Pacquiao fought Joshua Clottey, for example. Did Manny Pacquiao land a lot of clean shots? Not really, but that's because Joshua Clottey just in the high guard the whole damn fight. And he didn't win the fight because he didn't throw anything back. Okay? So you have to throw something back, obviously. And that's what Floyd Mayweather, for example, mastered. He'll let you work. He's going to slip, shoulder roll, and then he's going to strike you with a straight right hand down the pipe and then check left hook you. And then he gets out of danger. And so that's kind of my little monologue there for a second when it comes to judging fights. But I just gave out 2 examples, Stormy, one being the Paul Williams-Lara, and then an older fight back in the day between Joe Lewis and Jersey Joe, where fights have been judged horribly wrong. So you can go ahead and chime in and let the people know your thoughts.
Well, you did cover some fights with a commonality with what we're, the subject is about, and then including in your thumbnail, the one that you didn't mention was the Holyfield and Lennox Lewis fight,
Right.
the first time.
Right. And you're a Holyfield fan.
Yeah, and I didn't think that Holyfield won that fight. Don King worked his magic once again in that one because, he was now promoting Holyfield after Holyfield defeated Mike Tyson. So, but it made Holyfield fight a more inspired fight in the second fight. He boxed better, but Lennox was just a little bit too much as far as his height and size, reach, advantage. And Holyfield was starting to be a little bit beyond it. I felt like if they had fought earlier in their years, Evander would have got him because Lennox is a little bit chinny, and he would have tricked Lennox into exchanging with him where he can get him on his chin. Lennox was, you have to understand that Lennox was by that time being trained by Emmanuel Stewart, who also trained Evander for his second fight with Riddick Bowe. So he knew a lot of secrets about Evander that he could share with Lennox that would help Lennox be safe in the fight. Because he trained Evander to beat a big man like Lennox was in Bowe. So he would obviously train Lennox to be safer against Evander and what his strengths are, just in case Evander tried to fight Lennox like he fought Bowe. So
absolutely,
just one of those things when boxing, it's like that's how that comes up. But yeah, the fights that you mentioned, the Jersey Joe and Joe Lewis first fight, Jersey Joe put on a boxing clinic, man, and he befuddled Joe Lewis with his foot movement and being able to throw punches from odd angles and everything, because Jersey Joe was not the traditional heavyweight boxer that we had seen during that era, which also calls to the defense for people who says that Joe would beat Muhammad Ali. No, because Ali would have presented him with even more problems with footwork and hand speed. But it was a great fight between the two men, and even Joe Lewis had admitted to Jersey Joe, he's like, man, you got me on this one, but they had a rematch, and Joe Lewis was able to be successful. So this corrupt officiating has been around for quite a long time. My man Pernell Whitaker, who I loved as well, his fights against Jose Luis Ramirez, the first fight, and his fight against Julio Cesar Chavez. Those were 2 fights that were definitely taken away from Sweet Pea, who totally outclassed the opponent with footwork, defensive ability of making them miss, and he countering, landing, because that's the whole idea, to score points. And Sweet Pea could score points on them, but they couldn't hit him with a handful of buckshot. So we've seen this before, and that was on the world stage. That's at the highest level of the sports, championship caliber fights. But what makes this so disgusting is this wasn't championship caliber, even though they were fighting for a WBA interim title. It was something because look at what they did. They brought Fox in as a late replacement. He wasn't even the original opponent. And then when they had that glove fiasco before the first round, where they discovered that this guy came in and his gloves weren't taped properly and everything. So it's like they were trying to stack the deck against Mykal Fox, and Mykal was able to overcome that, put on a boxing clinic, and he deserved the victory. See, I talked about this a lot. I recently did a video that's called Welcome to Black Murderers Road 2021. When they are trying to make certain individuals stars in the sport, when they are trying to keep a certain, I'll use the word they use, demographic, when they're trying to keep a certain demographic alive in the sport, they will go through extreme means to ensure that this happens. They will make certain that decisions go favorably or not in a certain direction. They avoid legacy defining fights. They create avenues for guys to escape from accountability. Meaning, like, if you're telling me that, let's just use Canelo Alvarez, for example. I like to throw him under the bus. If you're telling me that he's the best guy in the sport, then why have you created so many avenues for him to escape matches that will clearly define to the public whether he is or not? You see? Because his talent alone should be able to reveal that to us, right? As long as you give him the matches, you set up the pins, he knocks them down. But that's not what happens. They've created things like franchise belts. They've given, you can have a certain amount of PEDs in your system. They've created other avenues for makeshift championship matches for him to take. Like when they stripped David Benavidez from his belt, then they said that Canelo can fight for it. But when Canelo was lingering and didn't know what he was going to do with his career, and Benavidez was the champ, he didn't say, "Hey, champ, I want to fight you for your belt." You see what I'm saying? And that's kind of like one of those things, like, what's up with that? And then how about on the night that he fought for that vacant title against Advin Yildirim, and then later on the same night, Andre Durrell was fighting someone who had lost. He had lost to Benavidez on a bad cut and everything, right? It's like, why didn't Canelo fight him for the vacant belt? They fought on two separate cards on the same night, but he was a better opposition than Yildirim, and Canelo was better opposition than the guy that Durrell fought. Why didn't they just fight each other? It's like, that didn't make any sense to me. And they fought on the very same night. Matter of fact, they delayed Canelo coming to the ring to the Durrell fight was over, and then he came out after that. So it's like, I'm actually pointing this out, and you've seen it. It's true. It's like, this is the corruption of the sport that we talk about. Now, mind you, I'm not doing Canelo bashing. I'm actually pointing out what you tell me. What is the requirement that he's as good as you try to say he is? If he beats these guys that I speak of, I have no choice but to give him credit. And it's not like I'm trying to not to give him credit. But when you take the opportunity for legacy away from men who are waiting to prove themselves, aka like Devin Haney, no one wants to fight the guy. So how can you be a champion in the sport of boxing and you don't have anyone to defend against, no one to challenge you? You don't have mandatories, because they're just pulling these guys away from you. They did the same thing to Gary Russell Jr. It's like he's there, and people were allowed to move up and move away and not be available. That's corruption, bro. Yeah. That is absolute corruption. And the thing about it is, this is how they bait the fans. they'll make you and I and me and some of the people in the chat here and you and some of the people in the chat here, they'll make us go at each other on no,
Facts.
listen, on
Facts.
ethnicity.
Yep.
On
Facts.
ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm not asking your nationality, but I will say, you can see I'm clearly a black guy. But there are people out here in the chat that may be Latino, there may be people that's Polish or whatever, but they bank on the fact that you will have national pride. And so you can't get on the same accord with what I'm saying. So to keep that division, they could keep the game going. You want to see, you say you want to see the best fight the best, but if you truly did, that means your favorite fighter getting in there, putting it on the line, the one that you support national pride with, getting in there, putting it on the line against another guy who might beat him, or who might beat you, he might beat them. But it's like that's where they bank on you being so shallow-minded that they can keep the division between and separation between the fighters based on your assessment of what you're looking at. And it's like, oh, if I'm a Latino and I'm saying, well, Canelo's the best, but if he never fights Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo or what, how can I say he's the best if those were the best around as his contemporaries and he their best around as contemporaries, and they need to come together to prove who's the best? If it never transpires, how can I say either of the three are the best?
They say, oh, well, he beat Triple G, and Triple G was a monster, and only Canelo could beat him. That's what they say.
Well, I'll tell you, Sergey Derenchenko beat the crap out of Triple G, even better than Canelo did, but he didn't get the decision. There's more corruption right there.
Yep.
And people didn't want him to be the champ because as much as folks don't even know who Triple G is, you really don't know who Sergey Derenchenko is.
Absolutely.
And it's like, that shows you that what I'm saying is true. They will continue to manipulate you and keep you separated and divided, and you don't know what you're looking at. But at the same time, you have that national pride thing. They play that up, huh? And at the end of the day, all you say you wanted to see is the good boxing. And you can't get that because that's not what they want to feed you. And they'll keep us fighting. We're in championship battles over who we like and who we think could beat anybody or whatever. But on paper, it means absolutely nothing. Because on the night of the fight, if someone actually gets in the ring, they could have a bad night. They could have an off night. They could have just broke up with their woman or whatever. Mentally wasn't up for it. Whatever the case may be, went into it with an injury, which is why, okay, you got me this time. Let's have a rematch. Because now that you got me that time, I'm a little bit motivated for the rematch, and I'm going to come out and do my best this time, whatever. Hey, I've always stated that rematches really support the sport. They uphold the sport. Because sometimes on that next time go around, with people being a little bit more familiar with one another, it will allow someone to make adjustments. But as long as we continue to have this manipulation by the powers that be, have you focused on the wrong thing, you can't really get what you want because they pacify you with something else.
Now, check out what I just put up on the screen. All right, this is Ring TV, and this is the super middleweight division, 168. You got Canelo as a champion. He's got 4 belts, obviously. And then you got they've got David Benavidez at number 1, Caleb Plant at 2, Callum Smith at 3, Billy Joe at 4, Anthony Durrell at 5. We'll stick with the top 5 for now. Of these 5 men, for me, you got 4 belts. This is what I always try to tell Canelo fans. You got 4 belts. You have a golden opportunity to do something that very few fighters have done. And that is to unify and become the undisputed super middleweight champion. And you got a man right there who's the he has got the IBF strap, which is Caleb Plant. But here's the thing: even if you let's say, oh, it's Caleb Plant's fault. Caleb Plant's fault that the fight didn't happen. Okay, let's just put Caleb to the side for a moment. You got Benavidez right there. He's number one. He is your number one. Basically, he's the number one contender. Right? That's where Ring TV has him. For me, it's a no-brainer. Instead of chasing a guy that's at 175, who you know you won't fight at 175, you'll probably fight him at a catch weight of 172. How does that define your career when you have an opportunity, a golden opportunity, to unify the title and become an undisputed champion at any weight class? And not to mention, we have the Charlo at 160, who I would imagine would have no problem moving up to 168 if he had the opportunity. So it's not like he's cleaned the divisions out, right? He had a couple mega fights. He got the Triple G fights and some other mega fights. He got Daniel Jacobs and things like that. And it's just it's a constant situation of waiting for an opportunity that always helps him, and not the sport and not the fighters that are trying to earn their spot. So looking at these just at the 168, right off the bat, Stormy, who should he get in the ring with ASAP? And after that, who should he fight?
Well, he should definitely fight Caleb Plant, because that will bring about undisputed. Okay?
Right.
Now, after fighting Caleb Plant, the next person that should definitely be in line is David Benavidez.
Correct.
Because he lost the belt on the scale, but he didn't lose it in the ring, and he deserves that chance to fight for the title again. There is a such thing called redemption, okay? And let's put it like this. They could have played games with the scales on Benavidez. This could have been all devised. That's the corruption of boxing now. But see, what Benavidez would behoove himself to know this now going into future opportunities is that get your butt in shape. Get your butt in shape and be ready to go. See, we've had guys of today show us the wrong way of doing it for too long. In past, the fighters of yore, they would stay within 12 pounds of their fighting weight or whatever anyway. They'll be ready, so that all they need is about 10, 15 days to get some extra water weight off and everything and be able to make a weight class. But we don't see these guys. And you see these guys today blowing up. They're actually fighting at artificial weights because they're much bigger men, draining themselves down to lighter weights, you know, and kind of milking that to a certain degree. Because even if you were to rehydrate after a weigh-in, you shouldn't really rehydrate more than 8 to 10 pounds. Seriously. You shouldn't. You know what I mean? When you got a guy rehydrating 15, 20 pounds, it's like, okay.
And in 24 hours.
Machi, right? That was a horrible situation. Gotti came in almost 20 pounds heavier after weigh-in, and he looked it, and he beat the crap out of Joey Gamache in that fight. Joey Gamache's now a trainer, you know, but it was ridiculous. When you see these guys and they're not, and there's another thing to be said about this with corruption in the sanctioning bodies. The sanctioning bodies don't really want undisputed, because they want to be able to filter in all these guys out with contenders and pretenders and what do they call them? Voluntary defenses and everything. So they get those fees, you know? So if you're an undisputed champion, that means that's a 1-year rotation per title for sanctioning bodies. That means that somebody is going to be on ice for a minute. You understand? They don't really want that, because just like I told you about Canelo and Durrell fighting on the same night, it's like with it being a championship situation, they don't want that. They don't want you to be fighting on the zone with one belt, and then somebody later that night is fighting on Fox or Showtime with another belt. It's like, they'd rather have guys fighting multiple fights, and making that money off of it. You can see it, And as far as these guys that you just put up on the screen,
this 160.
When will Gennady Golovkin sit his butt down somewhere? He's finished. He's through. And I'll tell you, if he's looking for, lesser opposition to get in there with, holding on to that IBF title, but they won't let him in there. Well, he won't let these other men to the party. He won't fight Sergey Deverenchenko in a rematch. He's never going to give Demetrius Andrade or Jamal Charlo an opportunity. And this Murata guy is really unknown, but at the same time, Jaime Munguia might be the man they take a risk with, but at the same time, he doesn't really want to fight anyone youthful. So it's like Golovkin is just a guy on borrowed time.
Yeah.
I did a video recently on him as well, talking about there was a time when he was a good fighter and he could have even been better had Abel Sanchez had balls to put him in there with some of these other contemporaries that I've spoken about. But see, he tried to manipulate the audience and the boxing audience to say, well, he's fighting Mexican style. That means it's up front in your face and he's exciting and this and that. Well, put him in there with some of these good guys then.
Mm-hmm.
And don't forget, he said that famous quote, like, anyone from 160 to 175 he can take. But when Andre Ward said, here I am, they stopped that conversation very quickly. So it's like, come on, man. I keep telling you, they try to manipulate the people into feeling like they're giving you something, but they ain't giving you nothing. Huh?
Yeah,
other guys, you got two champions there, well, three champions with Andre, Charlo, and Golovkin. You take them out of the picture. Why isn't Jaime Munguia fighting Sergey Deverenchenko? Why isn't Murata fighting that guy Zanabek? Well, they should be fighting each other. They should be fighting each other. And out of that will come someone who's worthy of contention for a title, right? So I keep saying it, man. They will play on the public's ignorance. You have to know what you're looking at.
For me, I was always a little bit. I was never a huge Canelo fan, anyways. But I would say maybe I'm on the fence. But the way he treated Andre at his press conference, the post-fight press conference, that told me a lot about Canelo and his character and the way he spoke to Andre like that. Because Andre's just like, hey, just letting you know, I'm here. I'm ready to fight you. I got a belt too. And Canelo goes off talking about you ain't shit and, get the F out of here and all this stuff. And I'm like, really? That's how the people's champion talks? In front of everybody, in front of all these reporters and media. And then to make it worse, nobody in the media didn't put their hand up and say, well, excuse me, Canelo. Well, yeah, like the dude is a champ. So what's up? You gonna fight him or what?
Why don't you get the nobody out of the way?
Yeah. Because it's not sellable, right? That's the angle that they try to come at.
Was Callum Smith anybody?
Not at the time. He sure as hell wasn't.
Was that other guy? What's the guy's name that he beat up at 168? The other guy, Rocky Fielding. Was he somebody? I mean, he's had an assortment of UK nobodies, right? So why don't you take on this US nobody, get rid of him, and then move forward? That's if you can get rid of him. But see, that's what I was telling you earlier about when I talked about Black Murderer's Row. See, Demetrius Andrade has been a talented fighter in the division for a long time. A lot of fighters have avoided him, including Jamal Charlo, I'm sorry, at the middleweight division right now, because he can box, he can move, he can punch. It's just that he might not necessarily be the most visible guy that people really, really know who he is, but boxing pundits know who he is. And if you get in there with him, it's a chance you lose. Because if Montiel gives this guy the problems that he gave him, what kind of problems is Andre gonna give him?
Now, imagine if he doesn't fight Plant, and by some twist of fate, Plant fights Andrade, and then Andrade beats Plant. Then what are you going to do with Canelo? What are you going to do then? And
that would definitely close the walls in on him even more,
for
right?
Sure.
It would, because let's just put it like this. As talented as Plant is, Demetrius Andrade is probably the most talented out of all of them. But he doesn't exert himself in a situation that would make people take note. But if you get in there and fight him, he's a tough out. He really is, because he can box.
Yeah.
See, that's what I don't like, is the fact that these guys are not competing. Remember when we had Roy Jones and Bernard Hopkins, and you had guys like Gerald McClellan and all those guys, Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank, they were all kind of like around that area, right? But when James Toney was doing what he was doing in the middleweight division, nobody really wanted him. So he moves up to 168, and then they start shaking it out a little bit better. But when he was at 168 and Ben and Eubank went to 168, they didn't want to come across the pond to face him. So they stayed over there. Now, Stevie Collins, he would always say, I don't mind fighting guys, but it's funny how he just didn't do it. He didn't, okay, come on over here and let's fight, Stevie Collins. You know? And Roy went on to campaign at 168 for a minute, but he jumped on up to light heavyweight because the talent up there wasn't a great deal, and he didn't have to campaign against those other guys, and a couple of them were killers at 168.
Yep, facts.
Now, am I saying Roy ducked anyone? You could take it, it's open for conjecture, but if you look at how he maneuvered, Roy didn't want no problems with any other killers that were around during that time. And there were only about 2 of them.
Right.
Hell, Michael Nunn was a hell of a boxer, right? And Roy never faced him. Why did Roy never face Michael Nunn?
Good question. Wasn't it Roy Jones who beat James Toney when James Toney was undefeated?
Yeah, and James Toney was also, when they were doing that promotion for that fight, James Toney was 200 pounds, man.
I remember that, yeah.
People don't realize that. Yeah. So he drained himself down to 168, and in his rehydration, he put on 18 pounds. So he was sluggish when he got in there with Roy on that night. But he wanted a rematch. He wanted a rematch, and Roy wouldn't give it to him. And
I remember that.
You know, if he would have come in for a rematch, he would have come in highly motivated. So, you know, but that was James's fault. It wasn't Roy's fault. But I also believe if James was closer to fighting weight, he wouldn't have asked for that IBF challenge of James Toney's belt, because he would have went a different direction. This is why it's a lesson to these guys. Keep your butt in shape, because you could get guys, they could make all kinds of excuses. But when you're in shape and you're ready to go, like Caleb Plant is in shape and ready to go. He's not one of those guys that's going to take one of those 6-week camps or 4-week camps for Alvarez. He's going to take a full camp, and he said, I'll see you on fight night and kick your butt. Canelo wants all types of provisions, man. More corruption, you know. If he can't get it that way, he's going to get it another way. He's going to get it in the contract. He's going to put you in there and you have to drain down to this weight.
And it's crazy because Canelo's he's going to be the heavily favored fighter in that fight with Plant. And I mean, he should win it, right?
If Plant beats his butt, then everything was all a sham.
Right. So the risk is too much, basically.
Yeah.
is what you're saying.
The risk is too much. Championship caliber fighter, aren't risk a part of it?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's how you know. And like I said, this is corruption. It's a sham. They got guys that they want you to think are the best, and they're keeping them away from the fights that would prove whether he is or not. But in the meantime, he'll keep beating up on guys he should beat up on and keep telling you he the best. This is my argument the whole time. It's like, stop telling me how good he is and show me how good he is. Demetrius Andrade, Caleb Plant, David Benavidez, Jamal Charlo, y'all guys should be getting in the ring.
Yep.
It's a darn shame that this era will end. Okay, because you got young guns coming up. Yep. This era will end without any of these dudes facing each other.
I've been telling people, hey, Canelo's not a 24-year-old kid anymore. He's getting older. He don't got time to be bullshitting around, chasing catch weights and fighting the number 9 fighter or the UK fighters, or not taking real challenges. He don't got no time. He's going to end up like Triple G. Triple G is, what is he? He's 40 something.
You want to hear a horror story? Check this out, Divine. This is a horror story for you right here. At the end of the day, all they have is each other. And that's the fight that's going to happen. Believe me when I tell you. Triple G and Canelo.
Man.
You know why? Because they've been two of the biggest farces that have been going. And
this is what
and they're going to allow it to take place because Canelo has waited a certain length of time. I'm telling you, that last fight that Triple G had, he looked so old and slow, man. It's ridiculous. But it's just up Canelo's alley. And this time he may get the stoppage.
And I just double checked. He's 39. And this is his resume that I got pulled up here. And I'm just kind of browsing through it. It's been a while since I looked at Triple G's resume. No name really pops out at me.
Isn't that a shame?
I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, Willie Monroe, when he fought Willie Monroe, maybe had
Canelo is the only name.
16 fights at the time. David Lemieux. I'm a big David Lemieux fan, but look, let's face it, David Lemieux lost to Antonio Rubio. He took some other losses. Good puncher, but that's about it. Dominic Wade, Kell Brook. I mean, Daniel Jacobs. Nothing really stands out. Like, that's a really good win. And then he fought Canelo, but he had a draw and a loss. So not even a win there.
No one on his record that on paper you would have to go into that fight saying this could be a fight he could lose. No one.
Yeah, that's true. And he's definitely favored in all of these names I just mentioned, like going into the fight.
Yeah. That's when you know a fighter's record is crap. When you can't find someone that's on paper where you can say, I can see him losing this fight, that's when you know.
So the last fight he had was against Camille, the Polish. Was it Polish? Yeah, Polish fighter.
He looked terrible against the guy. He was old and slow as molasses in that fight.
RTD in 7. Yeah, I watch him fight, when he fought David Lemieux, because obviously I was always a David Lemieux fan when he was coming up. I thought he could have been something. But I mean, he he has skill. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Triple G does have skill, but it's the simple fact that, I mean, like we're pointing out, like who did he fight?
And he's
You
past
got
it
all
now.
the, you got all this skill, and who
He's
did you
past it
fight?
now. He's past
Yeah.
it now. It's like if he gets in there, even if he gets in there with Jaime Munguia right now, I would favor Jaime Munguia. As much as some people don't like Munguia or whatever, he's youthful enough to work at a rate that Triple G can't keep up with. That's the thing you have to understand. And they've been putting him in with tough, rugged guys, but not boxers, meaning that Munguia would be prepared for that tough ruggedness that Triple G brings. I'm telling you, this is all a sham. They've set this up, man. You could actually read it. You could read it like a Hollywood script. It's just a matter of who is it going to be. Is it going to be Canelo, fight the third fight, make a lot of money, send Triple G off into the sunset, or is it going to be Munguia, who will build a tremendous name off of sending Triple G to the sunset? But Triple G is the sacrificial lamb in all of this.
But check this out, Stormy. So this is Canelo's resume here. And I would say it's slightly better than Triple G, not by much, but slightly. But it's like when you look at the names, obviously Amir Khan. I mean, give me a break. Miguel Cotto is a reasonable name, but Miguel Cotto was, getting close to being towards the end of his career. And let's face it, Miguel Cotto was never a true middleweight, right?
No, let's face it. Had Miguel Cotto never encountered the Margarito situation, things could have turned out tremendously better for him.
That's true. And Miguel Cotto
for him. We don't know what that took out of him. We don't know what that took out of him. And Margarito should have went to jail.
100%. And on top of that, Miguel Cotto actually fought quite decently in that fight. It wasn't like he got destroyed. He was very competitive and fighting in a weight class that he was never great at. I mean, he was a fantastic welterweight and a lightweight, but I mean, come on. And then the fights like Laura, split decision. Some people felt that he lost that fight. And, so we're going through here. And so he has this Floyd Mayweather loss, right? And it makes me kind of chuckle because it's like they didn't want him to lose even to Floyd Mayweather, to the point where it was a majority decision. Are you kidding me? One judge gave it to Canelo. That was a boxing lesson. That was an absolute
corruption.
Boxing lesson.
About it to no end. This is the kind of thing. Listen, Canelo, let's just face it. I'm going to say it right here on the air, man. Canelo has European blood in him. Okay. That's why he has the features that he has. And somebody, bloodline wise, is importantly related to him. And that's what you got. You got a guy that they've been putting out there and making things convenient for him, creating avenues of convenience for him and everything. That's what it is. That's what it is.
That's deep.
Yeah, it's very deep, isn't it? Because it's like you would not think that would necessarily be true. But we're living in an era now when people tell you the truth to your face and people don't want to believe it.
100%. 100%. Look what America's going through right now.
Absolutely.
Right now, currently.
Look at the guy who was just able to be president. It's like, it's amazing when I'm old enough to know that a person like that 20 years ago would not even be considered. But the times have changed and people have become dumber in our society and allow things to happen. Do you know people are like literally selling children? You want to buy my child? Are you serious? When I was a child, to say something like that would have been so absurd. But it's like we actually live in a society like that now.
Mm.
And if you don't think I'm being honest, think about the R. Kelly situation. All those young ladies that was with R. Kelly, their parents let them go with him.
Damn.
And what did they get out of it? A little bit of money. So isn't that selling? Isn't that what they call it? What's that term? Um, Forgive me, it escapes me at the moment. When you're taking people, there's a term for that.
Mm. Well, I mean, it's basically like pimping out your own children, basically.
But it's that too. But there's a term
Mm.
they have for this nowadays. Trafficking.
Trafficking. Okay.
Yeah, that's what it is, bro.
Yeah, I feel like coming to a point in society where, and this is one of the main reasons why I continue to live overseas, and it kills me because I served in the military and I love my country, and I try to be the best person I can be and represent the right things. But it has been increasingly very difficult to be able to, quite frankly, stomach the things that I see happening back home, with all the racial injustices and the lies, the deception, the intelligence level of people is dropping dramatically, and it's sad. It's getting to the point now where nobody wants to have a conversation. Not even like nobody even wants to hear about what you can and cannot put in your own body. I'll just put it right there. They
Yeah,
don't even want to have a conversation about it. But what do
yeah,
you mean? What do you
yeah.
mean you don't want to put that in your body? Like, excuse me? Because it's my body. That's why.
Listen, when have you known in the existence of man? And we haven't been on this earth very long, right? But there have been generations prior to us. When has it been an absolutely mandate that you have to let the government put something in your body so you can maintain a certain quality of life, and without them telling you what it actually is that they're putting in your body? But you need this divine, you need this.
You about to spark
Otherwise,
something. You about to
huh?
spark me. You about to spark me.
Listen, bro.
I'm telling you.
Hey, man.
I'm telling you.
eh, there's a reason why the sensei. It's like, listen, man. And it's always, we can revisit, we can come back, but just say this: at the end of the day, we see corruption. Okay, we see corruption, and now it's time to do something about corruption. And how do you first do it? You recognize and identify that it exists.
Mm.
Then you can start working on. When you want to deny that it's not there, or close your eyes and turn a deaf ear to everything, then you're going to be run over by that train.
Mm.
But for me, this is my stop. This is where I get off. You know what I'm saying?
100%. It hurts me, Stormy. It does. I mean, I would say that I've had a lot of falling outs with friends that I grew up with in high school, and even family members that I don't even speak to anymore because of these very issues. And they have become so tainted and become so delusional, and they just don't see the truth. I mean, there's no other way to explain it. Now, I'm blessed to be able to see the world at a very young age. And I haven't hit 40 yet, and I've been to 12 different countries, lived in 4 different countries. That puts me into contact with many different walks of life, and I've just learned so much, and I was thankful. But one thing I knew at a very young age was the essence of life, the most important thing that is precious to me is freedom. There's nothing more precious to me than my own freedom. And what I try to explain to people is that they feel stuck, Stormy. They feel like they have no choice. They feel like, well, this is the way it is. I have to do it because I don't have a choice. There's always a choice. There's always a choice. Just because your mom does it, your dad does it, your neighbor does it, it doesn't mean that you got to do it. Oh, I can't. I don't know what to do with my life, man. I got all these bills to pay. I'm stuck. Like I would like to do this and that, but I don't do it. Well, all I hear is excuses. That's what I hear. And so, I think
there's something called the spirit of discernment, because we are living souls. We truly are. But there's something called the spirit of discernment. And guess what? Unfortunately, everybody doesn't have it, and everybody will not make it. And that's a cold reality. However, in order to change the perception of that, it would require a person to open themselves up to something that is outside of the norm of where they exist. In other words, you have to be able to see beyond the point of where you are. Just as you've spoken about being a person that's well-traveled. Being well-traveled helps a great deal because it allows you to experience life from different aspects of from where you come. But sometimes, just as a small child can be gifted and never really went anywhere in the world, that perception, that whole thing about discernment, life, who come into life with gifts. And they are there, the nation of people, not recede or pull them down. But the powers that be don't like for that to happen. Let me ask you to hold 1 second, man. I got to take care of something.
Yeah, no problem, bro. No problem.
Okay.
Well, for everyone that's still in the chat and have been listening, we're going strong now for closing in on 3 hours. We appreciate you. We've been going back and forth for quite some time, mostly talking about the sport of boxing and the corruption that we have witnessed most recently, talked about the history of corruption within the sport. And, Stormy and I just chop it up and started going off in a little bit of a different but very real and genuine direction, just talking about life. And so, yeah, sometimes this is where it leads when two great minds come together and just try to make sense of the craziness that we have to encounter sometimes. And it's all intertwined. You know what I mean? Rather we're talking about boxing or any other sport or everyday lives, corruption and deceit, it's all intertwined. And it's important that the way we approach boxing as a boxing fan is how we should approach life. You know what I mean? And I feel like sometimes I try to keep it boxing as much as I possibly can, but at some point in time, the walks of life seep through, and I try to give the best information that I can. Antoine's back in the chat, or maybe you've been here the whole time. I'm not sure. Jim Diamond, I recognized you earlier in the chat when we first went live. So for all of those people that have been live the entire time, I appreciate your endurance. I appreciate your stamina, being a part of the conversation this long. As I mentioned, we got Stormy back now.
I'm sorry, I had to go and let my wife in. I had locked the door accidentally on her. She couldn't get in the house. So Oh,
She gonna pay you back for that one later.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But Stormy, you and I, we hit a lot of different points today, and as always, it's been a pleasure. And for those of you who have joined a little bit later, if you don't know, Stormy has a little kind of, I don't know what you want to call it, an episode or some part of your channel where you have the eye of the storm. I don't know how you want to classify it as, but
yeah, that's a show that I do. I do it periodically, and what I didn't explain earlier is I seek out content creators and channel operators for the show. It's not just designated to them only, because I've had some professional fighters on the show as well. But I do the, it's like I do the show with whether you're a large channel, small channel, you know what I'm saying? Because it gives us a chance to have a connection. And that's what that's all about. And again, as soon as we're able to get our schedules together, love to have you on there, because I think you have a great platform, great mind, and it would be great to have you on there so we can get more people aware of what you're doing and what you're about out here. So, and that's what that show is all about.
Yeah, and I would love to continue to help grow it and make it something that I believe should be recognized and have a little bit more eyes on it. And yeah, I mean, like I told Drew many times, at the end of the day, it's bringing the voice together. We actually do try to practice what we preach. We preach it all the time. Like, we got to be one. We got to be one. Well, this is what we're doing right here. This is us being active. This is us making it happen. And it's the support from the subscribers, the super chats, the channel memberships, the donations to PayPal or whatever source that you like to help your channels out. It's every dollar is a motivating factor to us doing what we do. I don't know about Stormy, but for me, every time I get a comment, every time I get a like on a video that I make, every time I get a super chat, it automatically sparks something within me where I'm like, all right, I gotta keep going. I gotta keep it pushing. You know what I mean? If it's just one person or five people, that's that one person or five people or 10 people that respect what I have to say and want to continue to listen to what I have to say. So that means a lot to me. And as we continue to inch closer and closer to not only the Errol Spence and Manny Pacquiao fight, which is only a couple weeks away, I'm super excited about that, but also to October 9th, Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury, of course. What a glorious day that will be. I will, just to let everyone know, on some a little bit exclusive information, and I believe you guys are entitled to have this bit of information because you've been on this live stream for so long today, that I am planning to come back stateside, and not sure if I'll be able to attend the fight itself, but I do plan to go to Vegas and meet up with some people and chop it up on October 9th. So I'm hoping that everything works out. Unfortunately, with the COVID situation, that's pretty much my biggest setback right now. I'm not sure how it's all going to unfold, so I am watching it very carefully. And also on that note, Manny Pacquiao Spence, as I mentioned, I plan to do a watch party live. So if Stormy, you want to be a part of that, I know Drew Titan said that he would like to do that. So if you want to get involved in a watch party and just commentate on the fight as it's happening live, I don't know if you have plans.
Well, I don't mind being a part of the watch party, but I don't want to do commentary. And I'll tell you why. When I'm watching the fights, I'm actually studying. I don't have time to do the commentary. I know Reggie has asked me about doing commentary and a couple other people, but I have absolutely no interest in commenting on the fights. I like to watch the fights, and I'm watching the strategies, the tactics. There's so much. That's why when I do the post fight, I have the breakdowns that I do, because I'm really paying attention to the action. So
yeah, this will be my first time like actually commentating live. I don't imagine that I'll be doing like a play-by-play, like some Jim Lampley
yeah,
type
I
shit. But
can't do that.
I don't think I can. I don't think I can do it either. But it'll be cool. I think in between rounds, maybe, just to kind
Yeah,
of give some thoughts about what you saw in that previous round or
yeah.
whatnot.
That's a little different.
But
But doing the blow by blow, that's not my
oh,
thing.
yeah, yeah. I'm like you. I'm all invested in what's going on. Actually, a lot of times I remember I watched the Mayweather McGregor fight at a packed out bar, and also Mayweather Pacquiao, and people were just going ballistic. And every like 2 minutes, because a lot of people, like my friends, they're straight up casuals. They don't really follow boxing that much unless it's a really big fight. They know I'm a huge boxing head, right? So when I go there all the time, hey, yo, hey, what'd you think about that round? Oh, what'd you think about that punch? Oh, so who do you think's winning? I'm like, just leave me alone. Like I'm watching the fight. We can talk about it afterwards. And so
That's
I hear
like
what you're
my
saying.
experience of watching fights live. Because I've been to live fights. I actually
Mm,
enjoy watching it on television better because I can see certain things on television that I can't see sitting ringside. You know what I mean? Which is
ringside,
why
yeah,
I understand how a judge's perspective can be kind of misconstrued at times, depending
yes,
on where fighters are positioned in the ring when they're sitting ringside. I always
and
felt like judges should be elevated and looking kind of like down, 3/4 way down on a
mhm,
ring than just being sitting ringside and looking up, because
yeah.
you that's not really good.
Now, what I want to do, Stormy, this might be something that you might want to consider doing for your channel as well, is give your viewers um, a kind of viewpoint, or I guess an inside look on how you judge fights personally.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be a fight from in the past, and you can just play it out. And unfortunately, with copyrights and stuff like that on YouTube, which I've already been hit with, PBC try to take down my uh, Wilder and Fury. Uh, what do you call it? Breakdown slash film study. That's what it was. But anyway, so I'm not sure how to do it or execute it exactly, but I've done it in the past, back in the day, and I kind of told people, okay, how I judge a fight. For me personally, how I judge a fight is I almost go punch for punch, and I'm always making constant mental notes. So I'll be like, okay, this guy's ahead. Okay, this person did this. Okay, now this person's slightly ahead, or this fight's even. And I just kind of, that's why I'm so invested in it, watching punch for punch, because you can't just loosely watch a fight. That's impossible. You can't loosely watch it. And a lot of times I watch fights, especially on replays. I it's on mute. I don't like the commentators to distract me, and I just focus on the fight and the two fighters in the ring. And I learned that a long time ago, because my scorecards would vary massively by just putting it on mute and just being completely focused. Now, when it's going live, it's hard. It's hard not to get drawn in. And like, to your point, I can see how judges, if they're not lasered in focused, I can see how they can be persuaded by the crowd and what's going on and different things. And and by no means are we up here saying, "Oh, being a judge is so easy. Just watch the damn fight." And there's a lot of stuff that I think people don't consider that happens in a fight, and what they have to look out for, and the things they have to deal with as far as their own human emotions. But as we stated many times today in this live stream, there has to be some type of process and getting the right people for the job that come in, and obviously keeping the corruption side out of it. No under the table money. No, we got to help this guy's career, and we've just got to give a couple rounds away. None of that bullshit, which clearly has happened for a very, very long time. So that might be something that you want to be interested in, because I've had a lot of questions about that in the past, where subscribers come to me like, "Oh, hey, Divine, how do you actually score fights?" And when they hear your perspective to it, it changes a lot of minds. When you tell them, "Okay, this is what I look for," body punches score. A jab to the midsection is a point. Going body head, that's 2 points. And then the defensive side of it as well. And not being overwhelmed by 10 punches thrown and only one landing, and stuff like that. So just some friendly advice, something new that you could do. And yeah, man, it's been a pleasure having you on. We've been chopping it up.
Let me share something with you on that. Since that's a great suggestion. But I've already crossed those avenues, and I do it on a regular basis. That's what my Tuesday tussle is about, bro.
Ah, nice.
Yeah, so go back and check out some of those, because from a coach's perspective, the Tuesday tussle gives you boxing breakdown from soup to nuts, as my man Kurt Sugar likes to say. Some of the shows, I talk about ring generalship. I talk about, fighting on the inside. I talk about, usually the title of the show is what it is. And then sometimes the title might be an analogy that can be applied towards something else. And then also how you can parlay certain things into life, not just the sport of boxing. So yeah, if you go to my channel and go into my archive and just type in the just type in Tuesday Tussle, all of the shows will come up, and you'll see how some of them I have, like when you was doing your Wilder Fury film review, I'll have the fight playing, and I'm sitting there talking about it and giving breakdowns. Dude, I do it. I do it all.
Yeah.
So
I'm just trying to avoid. I'm trying to figure out a way. I wish there was a way where on YouTube you can play a full fight and display it and commentate on it and study it.
Well, there are ways to do it. I can talk to you behind the scenes about it.
Okay,
because
cool.
You'll see. Even when I've done my 3 Wise Men of Boxing, where Kurt Sugar and myself and Scrapbook, we do anniversary shows where, anniversary of a fight. Like a few months ago, we did the 50th anniversary of Ali Frazier. And we played the fight and we talked about it. We gave our own commentary on it and everything. So it's like, yeah.
We'll talk about that behind the scenes before we head out. But for all those who jumped into the live stream today, or if you come back here when the video is uploaded, you do, for the people that weren't able to watch it live, we always appreciate you and thank you so much. If you guys don't know about StormyB, man, go check him out. Check out his channel. Highly respected man. Always a pleasure to chop it up with, and I learn something new every day. And that's another reason why I do this. You gotta be ready and be open to learn new things. It just makes you a better person at the end of the day. So I got to give credit for that to StormyB, and hopefully Stormy, we can get back up on Drew Titan's channel again, because that was really fun, and that video was very successful. I'm not sure if you've popped by and watched the replay of that, but it was a very successful live stream, and hopefully we can do that again as well. So appreciate you guys. I'm going to go ahead and get out. It's 2 a.m. for me, so it is way past Divinesense's bedtime, and got a lot of stuff to do tomorrow, man. But I appreciate you guys. We'll be back on here again soon. Keep your eyes out for Divinesense Boxing, StormyB. We're dropping stuff all the time. Stay a part of the conversation. Make sure you subscribe, smash that like button, and we'll catch you guys very soon. Peace.
Peace.